On Thanksgiving, my parents made me a joke by handing me a $2 lottery ticket while gifting my sister a luxury cruise. They laughed, unaware that crumpled paper was worth $100 million. But the money wasn't the real shock. It was discovering they had used me as financial collateral. Now, as they sail the ocean, I am about to make a video call that will leave them drowning in their own secrets. My name is Brooklyn Young, and I am 34 years old. Though if you looked at the seating chart of my family's Thanksgiving dinner, you would think I was still sitting at the children's table. Actually, the children's table might have been an upgrade, at least over there. The disrespect is unintentional. The air in the dining room was thick, smelling of roasted turkey, expensive sage stuffing, and that specific brand of passive-aggressive tension that only the upper middle class seems to perfect. There were nearly 30 people squeezed into my parents' dining room. It was a performance. It is always a performance. We call it Thanksgiving, but really, it is the annual general meeting of the Young family, where my parents, Dale and Cynthia, preside over the shareholders and distribute dividends based on affection and compliance. My sister, Peyton, sat to the right of my father. She was glowing, her skin that perfect shade of spray-tan bronze that costs more than my monthly rent. Her husband, Grant, sat beside her, checking his watch as if his time was a currency too valuable to spend on turkey. And then there was me. I was seated near the kitchen door, the spot usually reserved for the help, which, in a way, I suppose I was. The dessert plates had been cleared. This was the moment, the gift ceremony. It was a tradition my mother invented 5 years ago to show appreciation for the family. In reality, it was a public ranking system. "Peyton, darling," my mother said, her voice chiming like the crystal glass she was holding. She stood up, commanding the room. The chatter died down instantly. My mother has that effect. She doesn't demand silence. She expects it. "Your father and I know how hard you have been working this year. Being a wife, a mother, a social pillar of this community, you deserve to recharge." My father, Dale, slid a heavy cream-colored envelope across the mahogany table. It looked thick, expensive. Peyton did a little gasp. Practiced. Theatrical. Perfect. She tore open the wax seal. She pulled out the glossy brochure inside. "Oh my God," she squealed. "A Caribbean cruise? The Royal Suite?" "7 nights," my father announced, puffing out his chest. "All expenses paid. First-class flights to Miami. You and Grant need the ocean air." The room erupted. Applause. Oohs and ahs. My Aunt Lila clapped politely. But her eyes looked tired. Grant leaned back and smirked, nodding as if this was merely the tribute he was owed. Peyton jumped up, hugging our parents, tears glistening in her eyes. Tears that stopped exactly at the lash line so they wouldn't ruin her makeup. Thank you, Peyton cried out. "You guys are the best." Then, the room went quiet again. The heavy, expectant silence turned toward me. I froze. I didn't want anything. In fact, every year I prayed they would just forget me. Being forgotten is painful, but being remembered by Dale and Cynthia Young is a blood sport. "And Brooklyn," my mother said. Her tone shifted. It dropped a frantic octave, losing the warmth it held for Peyton and replacing it with a saccharine, pitying sweetness that made my teeth ache. "We didn't forget you." She didn't slide an envelope across the table. She didn't stand up. She simply reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small, flimsy strip of paper. She flicked it onto the tablecloth. It didn't even slide. It just fluttered and landed near the gravy boat. It was a scratch-off lottery ticket, the kind you buy at a gas station when you are buying gum. $2, my father said, chuckling. "It is the Lucky 7 edition." The room was dead silent for one heartbeat. Then, Grant snorted. That was the signal. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. It wasn't warm laughter. It was sharp, jagged. It was the sound of 30 people acknowledging a punchline, and I was the joke. I stared at the ticket. It was bright neon orange, already slightly crinkled at the corner. "Go on," my mother urged, waving her hand dismissively. Take it. Who knows? Maybe you will finally find a way to pay for whatever it is you are doing with your life these days. I looked up at her. Her face was perfectly composed, but her eyes were cold. There was no love there. There was only a lesson. She was teaching everyone in the room my place. Peyton gets the ocean. Brooklyn gets a gamble. Then she delivered the line that would ring in my ears for the rest of my life. She said it clearly, enunciating every syllable so even the cousins in the back could hear. This is suitable for you. Brooklyn, it fits? The laughter grew louder. Peyton was giggling behind her hand, whispering something to Grant. I felt the heat rising in my neck, a burning shame that I had done nothing to earn but was forced to wear. This was the family theater. We all had our roles. Peyton was the star, the golden child, the protagonist. My parents were the directors. And me? I wasn't even the villain. I was the extra. I was the prop. I was the server who cleared the plates and took the insults. I reached out and took the ticket. My hand was steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Thanks, I said. My voice sounded small, foreign. I was about to stand up and leave, to retreat to the kitchen to wash the dishes as I always did, when I felt a hand on my arm. It was a grip surprisingly strong for a woman of 82. I looked down. My grandmother, Ruth Hart, was sitting next to me. She was the matriarch, technically, but my father had long since pushed her to the margins, treating her like a piece of antique furniture, valuable enough to keep, but annoying to maintain. Her eyes, however, were not furniture. They were sharp, clear, and currently blazing with a quiet fury that nobody else noticed. The laughter in the room was still dying down. Nobody was looking at us. They were too busy admiring Peyton's cruise brochure. Grandma Ruth squeezed my forearm. Her fingers dug into my skin. She leaned in close, smelling of peppermint and old lavender water. She didn't look at the lottery ticket. She looked right into my eyes, and for the first time that night, I felt seen. I felt like a human being, not a punchline. Her lips moved, barely making a sound, but I heard her perfectly. Call Harper Briggs. I blinked. Who? I whispered back. Harper Briggs, she repeated, the name crisp and urgent. The lawyer. Do not tell your parents. Do not tell anyone. Just call him. She let go of my arm and sat back, her face returning to a mask of senile indifference just as my mother looked over. Mother, are you okay? Cynthia asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. Do you need to go to bed? I am fine, Ruth said, her voice trembling just enough to play the part. Just watching the girls open their gifts. I looked down at the ticket in my hand. $2, a scrap of paper. My parents thought this was the limit of my worth. They thought this was a throwaway gag. They thought they were handing me trash. But as I sat there, gripping that neon orange paper, I didn't know that I was holding a hand grenade. They had pulled the pin when they laughed, and they had no idea that the explosion wasn't going to destroy me. It was going to level everything they had built. Before I tell you what happened when I scratched that ticket, I want to do something a little different. I know there are thousands of you listening to this story right now. Do me a favor. Go to the comments section. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is in your city. I want to know who is witnessing this, because for a long time, I felt like I was screaming into the void. Now, I want witnesses. Are you in London? Is it midnight? Are you in Tokyo? Is it morning? Let me know. Let's get the record straight before we go back to that night. Okay, are you ready? Let's go back to Thanksgiving. The dinner eventually wound down, but the performance didn't end. The cold open of my humiliation was just the beginning of the evening's scheduled programming. After the gifts, the family moved to the living room for coffee and brandy. The room was expansive, dominated by a fireplace that cost more than my car. I didn't join them. I knew my place. My place was in the kitchen, scraping cranberry sauce off china plates. The sound of their voices drifted in. They were talking about the cruise again. It is just perfect timing, I heard Peyton say. Grant has been so stressed with the new clients, We really need to disconnect. You deserve it. Sweetheart, my father's booming voice replied. You two are carrying the family legacy forward. We have to invest in our best assets. Assets. That is what we were to him. Peyton was a blue-chip stock. I was a bad investment he was trying to write off. I stood over the sink, the hot water turning my hands red. The lottery ticket was in my back pocket. It felt heavy, burning a hole through the denim. I pulled it out and looked at it again. Lucky 7. I almost threw it in the trash compactor. That would have been the dignified thing to do, right? To refuse to play their game, to let the $2 rot in the garbage along with the turkey bones and potato peels. But something stopped me. Maybe it was Grandma Ruth's voice in my head. Call Harper Briggs. Why would she tell me to call a lawyer? Grandma Ruth didn't have any legal trouble. She had surrendered most of her independence to my parents years ago when she broke her hip. They managed her finances. They managed her house. They managed her life, or so I thought. I grabbed a quarter from the jar of loose change my mother kept on the windowsill. A jar that was strictly for decoration, obviously. Since rich people don't use loose change, I placed the ticket on the marble countertop. It looked ridiculous there, against the dark. Veined stone. I started to scratch. The silver latex flaked off under the coin. I wasn't hoping for anything. Statistically, I knew the odds. 1 in 4.5 million for the jackpot. 1 in 10 for a break-even prize. I just wanted to get it over with so I could throw it away and say I did it. First number, 4. Winning number, 4. I stopped. Okay. Probably just $2. A free ticket. That was usually how these things hooked you. I kept scratching. Second number, 11. Winning number, 11. Third number, 23. Winning number, 23. My heart did a strange little flip. It wasn't excitement. It was anxiety. If I won $50, I would have to tell them. They would make a joke about it. Look, Brooklyn can finally afford a haircut. I didn't want to give them ammunition. Fourth number, 7. Winning number, 7. Fifth number, 31. Winning number, 31. All the numbers matched. Every single one. I put the coin down. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant laughter from the living room. I stared at the prize box at the bottom of the ticket. I hadn't scratched that part yet. I took a breath, a long, shaky breath that tasted of dish soap and resentment. I picked up the quarter again. I scratched the prize box slowly. 1 0, another 0. Another 0, a comma. 3 more zeros, another comma. 3 more zeros. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes with the back of my wet hand. I looked again. $100 million. The world didn't stop spinning. Angels didn't sing. The ceiling didn't open up. Instead, a strange, cold clarity washed over me. It was quieter than silence. It was the sound of a vacuum sealing shut. $100 million. I looked toward the living room door. Through the gap, I could see the back of my father's head. He was gesturing with a brandy snifter, pontificating about the stock market. Peyton was laughing at something Grant whispered. My mother was adjusting a flower arrangement, making sure it was perfect. They had just given me the means to destroy them. They thought they were giving me a crumb. They thought they were giving me a suitable gift for the failure of the family. I looked at the ticket again. It was crumpled from being shoved in my pocket. It was stained with a tiny speck of cranberry sauce. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Grandma Ruth knew. She didn't know about the ticket. She couldn't have known about the ticket. But she knew something else. Call Harper Briggs. The two things were connected. I could feel it in my gut. The timing was too perfect. The universe doesn't deal in coincidences this big. This was a convergence. I carefully folded the ticket. I didn't put it back in my pocket. I slipped it inside my bra, right against my skin, where nobody could see it, where nobody could take it. I turned back to the sink. I picked up a sponge. I continued washing the dishes. Let them have their cruise. Let them have their laughter. Let them have their family theater. The show was about to change. The genre was about to shift from a domestic drama to a revenge thriller, and they didn't even know the script had been rewritten. I looked at my reflection in the dark window above the sink. A thin, cold smile touched my lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a sharp smile, a blade of a smile. "Thank you, Mother," I whispered to the empty kitchen, my voice trembling with a dark promise. "Thank you, Father. I will use this gift exactly right." To understand why a $2 strip of cardboard felt like a loaded gun in my bra, you have to understand the anatomy of a young family Thanksgiving. It is not a dinner. It is a stage production. And like any good production, the hierarchy is established the moment the actors step onto the set. I arrived at the house at exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Punctuality is the virtue of the invisible, and I am nothing if not punctual. I was carrying a large ceramic bowl filled with a roasted butternut squash and kale salad. Tossed with a maple tahini dressing, I had spent 45 minutes emulsifying by hand. In my other arm, I balanced a bouquet of rust-colored chrysanthemums and eucalyptus I had arranged myself, sourcing the stems from a local grower I work with. I rang the doorbell. I have a key, of course, but using it implies a level of familiarity and welcome that I stopped assuming a decade ago. My mother, Cynthia, opened the door. She was wearing a cashmere sweater that was the color of heavy cream and likely cost more than my first car. She looked at me. Then her eyes slid downward to the salad bowl and the flowers. It was a quick, scanning glance, the kind a pawnbroker gives a fake diamond watch. "Oh, Brooklyn," she said, her voice flat. She didn't step back to let me in immediately. She just stood there, blocking the warmth of the hallway. "You brought foliage." "It is an autumn arrangement, Mom," I said, shifting the weight of the bowl. "And a salad. I thought it would be nice to have something fresh next to the stuffing." She sighed, a tiny exhale through her nose that signaled martyrdom. "Right. Well, bring it in. Just put the flowers in the mudroom sink for now. The foyer is already done in white orchids this year, and I do not want the pollen from those." She gestured vaguely at my carefully chosen blooms. "Getting on the runner. And just slide the salad into the back fridge in the garage. The catering team needs the main kitchen clear." There it was, within 30 seconds. My contributions were relegated to the mudroom and the garage. I was holding props that didn't fit her set design. "Happy Thanksgiving to you too, Mom," I said, stepping past her. She was already looking over my shoulder, scanning the driveway for a better car, a better guest, a better daughter. I walked through the house. It is a sprawling colonial revival in Connecticut, the kind of house that screams old money even though my father made his fortune in aggressive mid-market real estate acquisitions in the 1990s. The air smelled of expensive candles, sandalwood and ego. If my arrival was the delivery entrance, my sister's arrival was the red carpet. 45 minutes later, the heavy oak front door swung open again. This time, nobody had to ring the bell. My father, Dale, was already standing there, arms wide open, a Scotch glass in one hand. "There she is," he bellowed. "The star of the show." Peyton breezed in. She was wearing a structured camel coat draped over her shoulders, because actually wearing coats is for people who have to stand in the cold, and a pair of heels that clicked against the marble floor like a metronome set to a fast tempo. She looked immaculate. She always does. Peyton is 2 years older than me, but she has the kind of face that has never known a moment of worry. It is a smooth, unlined canvas of privilege. Behind her trailed Grant Halston, her husband. Grant is the kind of man who shakes your hand too hard and holds eye contact for a second too long, just to make sure you know he is dominating the interaction. He was carrying nothing but his own self-importance. "Mom! Dad!" Peyton squealed, dropping her designer bag on the very bench where my mother had forbidden me to place my coat. Traffic was a nightmare on the interstate, but Grant knew a shortcut. He is literally a genius. My mother rushed forward, bypassing me completely to embrace Peyton. "Oh, stop it. You are here now. Look at you. You look thin. Are you eating? Grant, are you feeding her?" "I am feeding her diamonds." "Cynthia," Grant joked, flashing a smile that showed too many teeth. "It is the only diet she likes." The room erupted in laughter. My cousins, my aunts, The neighbors who had been invited to fill out the crowd, they all circled around Peyton and Grant like moths to a very expensive flame. I stood near the doorway leading to the dining room, holding a tray of appetizers I had been ordered to pass around. I wasn't part of the circle. I was the boundary line. I watched them. This is what I do. I watch. When you are not the main character, you have plenty of time to study the script. I watched Grant navigate the room. He didn't just talk to people. He assessed them. I saw him corner my Uncle Bob near the fireplace. Uncle Bob is a retired dentist with a healthy 401k. I saw Grant lean in, his voice dropping to that confidential, "I shouldn't be telling you this, but I like you register." "The market is volatile, Bob," I heard Grant say, swirling his drink. "But volatility is just opportunity wearing a disguise. I have a private fund I'm opening up next month. Strictly invitation only. High yield. Short-term maturation. I could maybe squeeze you in, but we would have to move fast." Uncle Bob nodded, entranced. He looked at Grant like he was a prophet. But I looked at Grant and saw a wolf counting sheep. His eyes didn't smile. They flicked from Bob's face to his watch to the next person in the room. He wasn't connecting. He was calculating. He was counting people like he counted money. Suddenly, Grant turned and saw me watching him. For a split second, his mask slipped. He looked annoyed, like he had found a stain on his cuff. Then, the mask snapped back into place. "Brooklyn," he boomed, waving me over. "Come say hi to your big brother-in-law. Still saving the earth? One planter box at a time?" The group around him chuckled. It was a patronizing sound, soft and suffocating. I walked over. "Hello, Grant. Nice to see you." He wrapped an arm around my shoulder, squeezing a little too tight. It felt heavy, like a yoke. He turned to the couple standing next to him. The Millers, I think, neighbors. "This is Brooklyn," Grant announced. "Peyton's baby sister. She is the artistic one. She does—" "What is it again? Something with plants? Gardening?" I felt a muscle in my jaw jump. "I am a landscape architect. I have a master's degree. I work for Vesperline Civic Design, one of the most respected urban planning firms in the state. I design public parks that filter stormwater and reduce urban heat islands. I manage budgets in the millions. I am a landscape architect, Grant," I said, keeping my voice even. Right, Grant said, waving his hand dismissively. "Architect, plants, same thing. She is the free spirit of the family. We balance the books. She balances the feng shui." The Millers laughed politely. My mother, who had drifted over, placed a hand on Grant's arm. "She is very independent," my mother said. It wasn't a compliment. In the Young Family Dictionary, independent is a code word for unmanageable and disappointing. It means I don't need their money, which means they can't control me, which means I am useless to them. I didn't correct them further. I learned a long time ago that fighting back in these moments only makes you look smaller. If I screamed, "I designed city infrastructure," I would just look like a hysterical child demanding credit. So I swallowed the insult. It tasted bitter, like bile. "Excuse me," I said, sliding out from under Grant's heavy arm. "I need to check on the salad." I retreated to the kitchen. The catering staff was bustling around, plating the turkey. They ignored me, which I preferred. I leaned against the counter near the swinging door, trying to catch my breath. The noise of the party was a dull roar on the other side. That was when I heard it. My parents and Grant were standing just outside the kitchen door, in the hallway. They thought they were alone. "So, the cruise is all set?" Grant's voice was low, devoid of the charm he used on Uncle Bob. "Completely," my father replied. 7 nights, the owner's suite. We put it on the company card as a corporate retreat expense. It is a write-off." "Good," Grant said. "Peyton needs this. She's been asking too many questions about the accounts lately. I need her distracted. Sun, sea, and cocktails should do the trick." "And Brooklyn?" Grant asked. "Does she suspect anything? It is going to look odd if she is the only one not going." My breath hitched. I stood frozen. Oh, please. My mother's voice cut in. It was sharp and cold. Brooklyn is too busy with her little dirt projects. I told everyone she has a deadline. Besides, we are doing this to celebrate you. Grant, your success this year has kept this family afloat. We don't need Brooklyn there asking why we are spending money or why her grandmother isn't coming. Speaking of Ruth, Grant said, is the paperwork ready? It is on my desk, my father said. We will handle it after dinner. Once we get her to sign the updated power of attorney, we can move the deed to the shell company before the end of the fiscal year. Perfect, Grant said. Just make sure she takes her medicine before you bring the papers out. We need her compliant. Dale, not chatty. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands, gripping the edge of the granite counter, turned white. They weren't just excluding me from a vacation that I could handle. I was used to that. But they were talking about Grandma Ruth like she was a liability to be liquidated. And medicine? What medicine? I pushed off the counter. I couldn't stay in the kitchen. I had to know. I pushed through the swinging door. The three of them jumped slightly. They were huddled in the hallway, looking like conspirators in a Shakespearean tragedy. Brooklyn, my mother snapped, smoothing her skirt. Don't sneak up on people like that. I wasn't sneaking, I said. My voice was trembling, but I forced it to be loud. I just came to get some water. So, you guys are going on a trip? My father exchanged a look with Grant, a look of annoyed tolerance. It is just a small getaway, honey, my father said, putting on his benevolent patriarch face. For Peyton and Grant, a little bonus for their hard work. And you guys are going too, I said. It wasn't a question. Well, someone has to watch the kids while they relax, my mother said quickly. So everyone is going, I said. Except me. The silence stretched thin. Grant looked at his cuticles. My father cleared his throat. Brooklyn, my mother said, her voice dropping to that patronizing tone again. You are so independent. You have your job. You have your life in the city. We didn't think you would want to take a week off to sit on a boat with your boring old parents. You are always so busy. I have vacation days, I said. I have 4 weeks of vacation days. Well, she said, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. It is booked now. The cabins are full. Next time, darling, maybe next time you will be in a better position to join us. The implication was clear. I wasn't successful enough to deserve a seat at the table. I wasn't wealthy enough to be worth the ticket price. Right, I said. Next time? Besides, Grant added, a smirk playing on his lips, someone has to stay back and keep an eye on Grandma Ruth, right? You are her favorite, at the mention of her name. The library door down the hall creaked open. Grandma Ruth stood there. She was leaning heavily on her cane, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. She was wearing a simple navy dress, contrasting sharply with the sequins and silk of the rest of the party. Her eyes, usually cloudy with age, were laser-focused on my father. Who is talking about me? She rasped. Her voice was thin, but it had an edge of steel. My father's demeanor changed instantly. He rushed over to her, grabbing her elbow, not to support her, but to steer her. Mother, he boomed, too loud. You should be resting. The dinner bell hasn't rung yet. You know you get confused if you are up too long. I am not confused. Dale, Ruth said. She pulled her arm back. I heard you talking about the house. What about my house? Nothing. Nothing, my mother chirped. Appearing on her other side, they were flanking her like prison guards. We were just saying how nice the house looks for the holiday. Come on, let's get you to the table. You need to sit down. Have you taken your pill? You look flushed. I don't want the pill, Ruth said. She looked at me. Her eyes locked onto mine. It was a desperate, pleading look. Brooklyn? Come on, Grandma, Grant said, stepping in to block my view of her. He was huge, a wall of expensive wool suit. Let's get you some cider. The doctor said no excitement. They swept her away. They literally physically moved her down the hall. their bodies forming a barrier between her and me. It was efficient. It was practiced. It was terrifying. But before they turned the corner, I saw it. Grandma Ruth was clutching her old leather handbag. It was a battered, cognac-colored thing she had carried since the 70s. My mother hated it. She had tried to throw it away a dozen times, buying Ruth expensive Chanel and Prada bags to replace it, but Ruth never used them. She only used the leather bag. As they dragged her away, Ruth didn't look at my father. She didn't look at Peyton. She looked back at me, and then she deliberately looked down at the bag. She tapped it twice with her index finger. Tap, tap. Then she looked back at me, her eyes wide and meaningful. It was a signal. I stood alone in the hallway. The laughter from the living room picked up again. I felt a cold chill settle in the marrow of my bones. For years, I thought my family treated me this way because I was the weak link. I thought they mocked my job and my lifestyle because they genuinely believed I was failing. I thought I was the disappointment. But standing there, replaying the conversation I had overheard, the shell company, the medicine, the exclusion from the cruise so I wouldn't ask questions, I realized I had it all wrong. They didn't hate me because I was weak. They didn't exclude me because I was independent. They feared me. They kept me on the outside because I was the only one not drinking the Kool-Aid. I was the only one who wasn't charmed by Grant's money or intimidated by my father's bluster. I was the only one who actually looked at Grandma Ruth and saw a person, not a decaying asset. They were actors in a play, and they knew, deep down, that I was the critic sitting in the front row, taking notes. I looked at the closed library door where they had taken Ruth. I looked at the kitchen where my salad was rotting in the garage. Okay, I whispered to myself. You want me to be the outsider? Fine. But you forgot one thing about outsiders. Outsiders can see the cracks in the foundation that the people inside the house are too busy ignoring. I straightened my spine. I adjusted my dress. I walked toward the dining room to take my seat at the children's table. I would play my part for one more hour. I would eat their turkey. I would smile at their insults. I would accept their $2 lottery ticket. But I wasn't just a guest anymore. I was a spy, and the show was about to get canceled. The dinner disintegrated the way it always does. The laughter grew louder and slurred as the wine bottles emptied. And then, all at once, the energy in the room evaporated. The guests, bloated with turkey and self-satisfaction, migrated to the plush leather sofas in the great room or drifted out to the patio to smoke cigars that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I remained in the dining room. This was the final act of my yearly performance. While my mother entertained and my sister basked in the glow of her upcoming vacation, I became the invisible hand that restored order. I stacked the china plates. I gathered the linen napkins, stained with cranberry sauce and gravy. I scraped the bones into the trash. It was quiet work, and in a house this loud, silence was a luxury I was willing to work for. The catering staff had left an hour ago, dismissed early by my father to save on the hourly rate, leaving the intimate cleanup to family. By family, of course, he meant me. I wiped down the mahogany table, polishing away the rings left by wine glasses. I was running low on paper towels and heavy-duty trash bags. I knew my mother kept a stash of supplies in the credenza in the hallway, but it was locked. The only other place where extra supplies might be, specifically the heavy boxes of industrial liners my father insisted on buying, was in his home office. I hesitated outside the double oak doors of his study. My father's office was a sanctuary of toxic masculinity. It smelled of stale tobacco, aged scotch, and the distinct, metallic scent of stress. We were forbidden from entering without knocking, a rule enforced since I was 6 years old. But the hallway was empty. The voices from the living room were distant, a murmur of boasting and laughter. My father was holding court about interest rates. He wouldn't be coming in here anytime soon. I turned the brass knob. It was unlocked. I slipped inside and closed the door softly behind me. The room was dim, lit only by the green glow of a banker's lamp on the massive desk and the moonlight filtering through the heavy drapes. I moved quickly toward the supply closet in the corner, intending to grab the trash bags and leave. But as I passed the desk, something stopped me. My father is a man of obsessive organization. His desk is usually a barren landscape of polished wood, with every paper filed and every pen aligned. Tonight, however, it looked like a bomb had gone off. Stacks of files were toppled over. A tumbler of amber liquid sat dangerously close to the edge, leaving a wet ring on a leather blotter, and right in the center, bathed in the pool of green light, was a chaotic spread of documents that looked nothing like his usual neat contracts. I am not a snoop by nature. I value privacy because I have so little of it myself, but my eyes caught a splash of red ink on the top page. It was a stamp that I recognized from my own brief struggles with student loans years ago, but one that had no business being on the desk of a man who claimed to be a millionaire. Final notice. I froze. The trash bags were forgotten. I stepped closer to the desk, my heart beginning to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I shouldn't look. I should turn around, walk out, and go back to scrubbing dishes. But the pull was magnetic. It was the instinct of a prey animal sensing a trap. I reached out and turned the top page over. It was a loan agreement. But it wasn't from a bank. It wasn't from a reputable financial institution with a logo of a tree or a shield. The letterhead was stark, bold, and aggressive. Vantage Point Private Lending. I scanned the numbers, and my breath hitched. Principal amount, $165,000. That number was specific. It was odd, but what made my stomach drop was the interest rate. It wasn't the 5 or 6% of a mortgage. It was 18%, compounding monthly. That is not a loan. That is a financial death sentence. I looked at the signature line. There, in his sprawling, arrogant hand, was my father's signature, Dale Young, and right beside it, listed as the co-signer and guarantor, was another signature, a signature I had seen on birthday cards and Christmas checks, usually accompanied by a condescending note. Grant Halston. My mind raced. Why would my father, a man who bragged about his portfolio over Turkey, need a high-interest private loan for $165,000? And why was Grant, the family's golden boy financial wizard, co-signing it? Grant was supposed to be the one managing wealth, not anchoring debt. I flipped the page. The loan agreement referenced an Exhibit A for collateral. I found Exhibit A underneath a pile of unopened envelopes. It was a property deed. But not for this house, not for the sprawling colonial we were standing in. It was the deed to 12 Oakwood Lane. The air left my lungs. 12 Oakwood Lane was Grandma Ruth's house. It was the small, paid-off bungalow where she had lived for 40 years. It was the only thing in the world she truly owned. The only place where she felt safe. The place she begged to return to every time they dragged her to this mausoleum for a holiday. I read the legal text, my eyes burning in the dim light. It was a deed of trust and a collateral assignment. My father and Grant hadn't just borrowed money. They had put Grandma Ruth's house up as the security. If they defaulted on this 18% loan, which, looking at the final notice stamp, they were already doing, the lender would take her home. No, I whispered, the words scraping my throat. You cannot do this. But how? How could they legally pledge a house they didn't own? Grandma Ruth was still alive. She was still lucid. She would never agree to risk her home for Dale's debts. I dug deeper into the pile, my hands moving faster now, losing their caution. I found a document titled Quitclaim Deed. This document transferred the ownership of 12 Oakwood Lane from Ruth Hart to an entity called DYGH Holdings, LLC, DYGH, Dale Young, Grant Halston. I looked at the bottom of the page for the signature, Ruth Hart. I stared at it. I know my grandmother's handwriting. It is usually elegant, looped, taught in a strict Catholic school in the 1940s, but this signature was different. It was shaky, jagged. The lines trailed off. It looked like the writing of someone who was trying to fight gravity. I checked the date next to the signature. October 14th. October 14th. I closed my eyes, searching my memory. October 14th. A cold wave of realization washed over me. chilling me deeper than the November air outside. On October 14th, Grandma Ruth had been in the hospital. She had taken a bad fall in her bathroom, a fall my mother claimed was due to dizziness. She had been on high-dose pain management. I remembered visiting her that evening. She had been groggy, drifting in and out of consciousness, barely able to recognize me. She had kept muttering about signing the paper to go home. They had gone to the hospital. They had gone to her bedside while she was pumped full of opioids and pain blockers. They had put a pen in her hand and told her, what? That it was a discharge form? That it was a medical release? They had tricked her into signing away her house while she was high on morphine. My hands were shaking so hard, I nearly dropped the paper. This wasn't just financial irresponsibility. This was fraud. This was elder abuse. This was criminal. But there was more. I found one last document, buried at the very bottom, as if even the paper itself was ashamed to be seen. Durable power of attorney. This document granted Dale Young and Grant Halston full authority over Ruth Hart's financial and legal decisions. It was dated the same day, October 14th, but there was an addendum stapled to the front, dated just 3 days ago. Notice of activation. The clause stated that the power of attorney could be activated immediately upon the incapacity of the principal. There was a letter attached from a doctor I had never heard of, not her regular physician, stating that Ruth Hart was suffering from advanced cognitive decline and was no longer fit to manage her affairs. That was the medicine Grant had mentioned. That was why they were dragging her away from me. They weren't protecting her health. They were manufacturing her incompetence. They needed her to be declared incompetent so that the transfer of the house to their shell company would stand up if anyone looked too closely. They were erasing her personhood to cover their theft. I felt a scream building in my chest, a primal, jagged thing that wanted to tear the house down. I wanted to run into the living room and throw these papers in their faces. I wanted to scream at my mother for letting this happen. I wanted to punch Grant's smug, perfect teeth down his throat. But I stopped. I looked at the final notice. I looked at the interest rate. I looked at the shaky signature of the woman who had been the only source of love in my life. If I screamed now, they would spin it. They would say I was hysterical. They would say I didn't understand finance. They would say the transfer was for her protection, to pay for her care. They would hide the papers. They would destroy the evidence. They would gaslight me until I doubted my own eyes, just like they had done for 34 years. I couldn't be Brooklyn the daughter anymore. I couldn't be Brooklyn the failure. I had to be Brooklyn the witness. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My hands were still trembling, so I pressed my elbows hard against my ribs to stabilize them. I switched the camera to silent mode. I started photographing. Click, the promissory note showing the debt. Click, the predatory interest rate. Click, Grant's signature next to my father's. Click, the quitclaim deed transferring the house. Click, the shaky, drug-induced signature of my grandmother. Click, the date, October 14th. Click, the power of attorney. Click, the dubious doctor's letter declaring her incompetent. I photographed every page, every stamp, every notary seal. I made sure the text was legible. I made sure the context was clear. I worked with a cold, mechanical precision that scared me. I wasn't thinking about the betrayal anymore. I was thinking about chain of custody. I was thinking about burden of proof. They weren't just favoring Peyton. They weren't just being mean to me. They were cannibals. They were eating the weakest member of the tribe to sustain their own lifestyle. They were going on a luxury cruise paid for by the credit they secured using a dying woman's home. I finished the last photo. I checked the gallery to make sure they were clear. Then I quickly uploaded them to a secure cloud folder, one that wasn't linked to the family plan. I put the papers back exactly as I had found them. I tilted the stack slightly to the left. I moved the tumbler back to the exact millimeter of the wet ring. I made it look like chaos, but untouched chaos. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. It felt heavy now, heavier than the lottery ticket in my bra. The ticket was potential. These photos were kinetic energy. I didn't grab the trash bags. I didn't need them. I wasn't going to clean up their mess tonight. I turned and walked out of the office. closing the door silently until the latch clicked. The sound was final. I walked down the hallway, past the kitchen where the unwashed dishes still sat in the sink. I ignored them. For the first time in my life, I left a job unfinished. I walked past the living room. I could hear Grant's voice, loud and booming. "It is all about leverage. Dale, you have to know when to leverage your assets." I didn't stop to say goodbye. I didn't stop to make an excuse. I walked straight to the back door, the one that led out to the garden, to the mudroom where my coat was hanging alone. I put on my coat. I picked up my purse. I stepped out into the cold November night. The air was crisp and biting, smelling of dead leaves and wood smoke. It was a sharp contrast to the suffocating, perfumed warmth of the house. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the freezing air. It hurt, but it felt clean. It felt real. I looked back at the house. The windows were glowing with golden light, looking like a postcard of the American dream. Inside, they were toasting to their success. They were toasting to the cruise. They were toasting to the clever financial maneuvering that had secured their comfort at the cost of my grandmother's dignity. They thought they had gotten away with it. They thought the only person who knew was an old woman they had drugged and a daughter they considered too stupid to notice. I touched the spot on my chest where the lottery ticket sat. Then I touched my pocket where the phone was. "I am not cleaning up anymore," I whispered to the dark yard. My voice didn't tremble this time. It was steady. It was low. "I am not staying silent anymore." I walked to my car, the gravel crunching under my boots like the sound of bones breaking. I didn't look back. The play was over. The intermission was done. Now, the trial begins. I drove for 20 minutes before my hands stopped shaking enough to hold a cell phone. I wasn't going back to my apartment in the city. That felt too far. And frankly, I didn't want to be alone with the ghosts of the documents I had just photographed. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner near the interstate, the kind of place where the neon sign buzzes like a dying insect and the coffee tastes like burnt rubber. I needed an ally. The list of people I trusted in my family was short. It consisted of one name, Ruth Hart. But Ruth was compromised, locked away behind a wall of medical necessity and sedatives. I needed someone else, someone who was inside the circle but looking out. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name, Aunt Lila. Lila is my father's younger sister. She is the anomaly in the young bloodline. While my father chased status and country club memberships, Lila married a high school history teacher and moved to a modest townhouse in the next county. She was always invited to the performances, the Thanksgivings, the Christmases, but she always sat on the periphery, watching with a gaze that was equal parts amusement and exhaustion. I pressed call. It rang. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. I was about to hang up, assuming she was asleep or, worse, still trapped at my parents' house listening to Grant pontificate about the yield curve. "Brooklyn?" Her voice was low, guarded. It wasn't the warm, wine-soaked tone of a post-holiday greeting. It sounded alert. "Lila," I said, and I hated how my voice cracked. I left. I had to leave. There was a silence on the other end. It wasn't an empty silence. It was a heavy, pregnant pause, the kind that screams "I know." It stretched on for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I could hear the faint hum of a television in the background on her end. Then the sound of a door closing, shutting out the noise. "I saw you leave," Lila said finally. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I saw you come out of your father's office before you went out the back door." My stomach dropped. "You saw me?" "I was in the hallway bathroom," she said. "I saw you go in. I saw you come out. You looked like you had seen a murder." "I think I did," I said, gripping the steering wheel. "Or at least, the planning of one." "Don't," she cut me off sharply. "Not on the phone. Do not say another word on this line." The urgency in her voice sent a fresh spike of adrenaline through me. Lila wasn't paranoid. She was the most practical woman I knew. If she was telling me to shut up, it was because she knew the walls had ears. "Meet me tomorrow," she said. "There is a coffee shop on 4th and Main, the Roasted Bean. It is loud. It is busy. 9 o'clock. Can you do that? Yes, I said. And Brooklyn? Yeah? Delete this call from your history. The line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. I reclined the driver's seat of my Honda and stared at the fabric roof. Watching the shadows of passing headlights sweep across the ceiling, every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grandma Ruth's shaky signature. I saw the 18% interest rate. I saw the final notice stamp. At 8:45 the next morning, I was sitting in the back corner of the Roasted Bean. The place was a chaotic symphony of espresso machines, indie folk music, and college students typing furiously on laptops. It was the perfect place to hide. Lila walked in at exactly 9. She looked different than she had the night before. The Thanksgiving mask was gone. She wore no makeup, and the lines around her eyes seemed deeper, etched with a fatigue that went beyond sleep deprivation. She wore a heavy wool coat and kept her sunglasses on until she sat down across from me. She didn't say hello. She placed a large black coffee on the table between us and leaned in. "Show me," she said. I didn't ask what she meant. I pulled out my phone, opened the hidden folder, and slid the device across the scratched wooden table. Lila scrolled through the photos. She didn't gasp. She didn't look shocked. As she looked at the loan documents, the quitclaim deed, and the power of attorney, her expression hardened. It was the look of a mechanic diagnosing an engine failure she had heard coming for miles. She pushed the phone back to me. "I knew it was bad," she said, her voice low under the noise of the grinder. "I didn't know it was 18% bad." "You knew?" I whispered. "Lila, they are stealing her house. They are stealing Grandma's house to pay off a loan shark." "It is not a loan shark." "Brooklyn," Lila corrected me, a bitter smile touching her lips. "It is private equity. That is what Grant calls it." "Grant," I spat the name. "He is supposed to be a financial genius. He drives a Porsche. He is taking my sister on a $20,000 cruise." Lila laughed. A dry, humorless sound. "Grant Halston is not a financial advisor. He is a predator in a Brooks Brothers suit. Do you know what his actual business is?" I shook my head. "He runs a distressed asset fund," Lila said. "He finds people who are desperate, small business owners, people going through divorces, people with cash flow problems but high-value assets. He lends them money fast, with terms they can't possibly meet. And then when they miss a payment, he swoops in and seizes the collateral. He doesn't make money from interest. Brooklyn. He makes money from foreclosure." I felt sick. "So he is doing the same thing to Dad?" Lila took a sip of her coffee, her eyes scanning the room as if checking for spies. "Twist number 1, she murmured. "Your father isn't the victim here. Not entirely. Grant isn't preying on a stranger. He is preying on a partner." "What do you mean?" "Your father has been broke for years," Lila said. The words hit me like a physical blow. "Since the crash in 2008, he never recovered. The business, the investments, it is all smoke. He has been shuffling debt from one credit card to another, taking out second mortgages, borrowing from friends. Why do you think he is so obsessed with appearances? Why do you think the Thanksgiving dinner has to be so lavish? It is camouflage. If he stops moving, the sharks smell the blood." "But the house," I stammered. "The cars, the country club." "Leased, rented, on credit," Lila said. "He is drowning. Brooklyn." And he dragged Grant in to save him. Or rather, he thought Grant would save him. He didn't realize that asking Grant for help is like asking a boa constrictor for a hug. She reached into her oversized tote bag. "I have something for you, too." She pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a printout, grainy and low resolution. "I was at their house 2 weeks ago," Lila said. Grant left his laptop open on the kitchen island while he went to take a call. I saw a spreadsheet open. I took a picture with my phone and printed this out at the library. I unfolded the paper. It was a spreadsheet titled Projected Acquisitions Q4. It was a list of properties and assets. There were names attached to them. Strangers. But halfway down the list, I saw it. Asset. residential property, 12 Oakwood Lane. Owner, Ruth Hart/DYGH, Holdings. Status, pending incapacity. Trigger, action, liquidation/flip to rental, LLC. He has a schedule, I whispered. He has a schedule for selling Grandma out. He calls it consolidating family assets, Lila said, her voice dripping with disgust. He told your father that moving the house to the LLC protects it from the government if Ruth needs long-term care. He sold it as a smart move, but look at the status column. Liquidation. He isn't protecting it, I said. He is going to sell it the moment the ink is dry to pay off the debt Dad owes him. Exactly, Lila said. Your father gets his debt wiped. Grant gets the cash from the sale. And Ruth? She gets tossed into a state-funded facility because her assets are gone. I sat back, the cafe spinning around me. The cruelty was so precise. It was engineered. Does Peyton know? I asked. She is his wife. She is going on the cruise. Does she know her vacation is being paid for by Grandma's house? Lila shook her head slowly. Peyton? No. Peyton is living in a bubble that has been reinforced with steel. Your parents and Grant have spent years curating reality for her. She thinks the money is real. She thinks Grant is a genius. She thinks you are the failure because that is the narrative they feed her. If she knew, I don't know if she would survive it. She has never had to handle a single ugly truth in her life. She is 36 years old. Lila, I said. Ignorance is a choice at this point. Maybe, Lila conceded. But right now, she is not your enemy. She is just a pawn, a very well-dressed, expensive pawn. I looked down at the table. I thought about the night before, the way they had laughed at me, the way my mother had handed me the lottery ticket. They think I am stupid, I said. They think I am just the gardener girl who clears the plates. I reached into my bra. I had kept the ticket there all night. I pulled it out. The neon orange Lucky 7 ticket was warm against my skin. I placed it on the table between us, right next to Lila's black coffee. It looked ridiculous. A $2 scrap of paper in the middle of a conspiracy. That is what they gave me, I said quietly. For Thanksgiving, while Peyton got the cruise, Lila looked at the ticket. She didn't laugh. She didn't roll her eyes. She looked from the ticket to my face. She studied me. She saw the set of my jaw. She saw the lack of sleep in my eyes. She saw the cold, hard anger that had replaced my usual deference. She didn't know I had won. I hadn't told her. I remembered Grandma's voice. Call Harper Briggs. She hadn't said, call Lila. She had said, call the lawyer. I had to keep the circle tight, but Lila was sharp. She looked at that ticket, and then she looked at the defiant way I had slapped it onto the table. It wasn't a gesture of defeat. It was a gesture of a gambler who knows the next card. You are not going to let them get away with this, Lila said. It wasn't a question. No, I said. I am not. Good, Lila said. She leaned back. Because I can't stop them. I am the sister with the teacher husband. They don't listen to me. They think I am quaint. But you have nothing to lose. Brooklyn. And that makes you dangerous. She tapped the printout of the spreadsheet. Grant mentioned something else that day, she said, her voice dropping even lower. He was on the phone with his lawyer. He said, we need to move fast on the Hart property. The old lady is tougher than she looks. But once we get the power of attorney active, we can bypass the probate courts completely. I felt a chill run down my spine. Bypass the courts. They are trying to do this in the dark, Lila said. If you shine a light on it, the cockroaches will scatter, but you need a big light. I looked at the ticket again. $100 million was a very big light. It was a spotlight. It was a supernova. I have a plan, I said. I didn't have a plan. I had a lottery ticket and a rage that felt like it could burn down the city. But I sounded convincing. What are you going to do? Lila asked. Grandma whispered something to me. I said. She told me to call Harper Briggs. Lila's eyebrows shot up. Harper Briggs? The estate attorney? He was your grandfather's lawyer. I thought he retired years ago. Apparently not, I said. If Grandma told me to call him, she must have a reason. Lila nodded. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was dry and cool. Be careful. Brooklyn, she said. Grant is not just a bully. He is desperate. And your father is desperate. Desperate men do dangerous things when they are cornered. If they find out you know, if they find out you have proof, they won't find out, I said. Not until it is too late. I picked up the lottery ticket and slipped it back into my pocket. I picked up the phone with the photos. I am going to fix this, Lila, I said. I am going to get her house back. I hope so, Lila said. She looked at me with a mixture of pride and fear. Because if you don't, there won't be anything left of this family to save. I stood up. Maybe that is the point, I said. Maybe it doesn't need saving. Maybe it needs to be demolished so we can build something decent on the lot. I walked out of the coffee shop. The morning sun was bright and blinding. The world looked exactly the same as it had yesterday, but everything had changed. I walked to my car, got in, and locked the doors. I pulled up the search bar on my phone. Harper Briggs, attorney at law. There was a number. It was a local office, a small firm in the old downtown district. I looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was 9:30 in the morning. I pressed the call button. It rang once. Harper Briggs Law, a receptionist answered. How may I direct your call? My name is Brooklyn Young, I said, my voice steady, my heart pounding. I am the granddaughter of Ruth Hart. She told me to call. There was a pause, a shifting of papers. Hold for Mr. Briggs, the receptionist said immediately. He has been expecting you. He had been expecting me. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 20 years. The game was on. The receptionist's voice had been professional, crisp, and utterly terrifying when she said, Mr. Briggs was expecting me. But before I could even stammer out a greeting, the line clicked and a different voice came on. It wasn't Harper Briggs. It was a younger man, sounding hurried. Ms. Young, this is Mr. Briggs's senior paralegal. He is currently in court, but he flagged your name as a priority code red. He cannot speak on an unsecured line, and he gave strict instructions not to discuss sensitive matters until he is in his private office. He will call you at 8 o'clock tonight. Do not, I repeat, do not, go to your parents' house. Go somewhere neutral. Wait for the call. The line went dead before I could say yes or no. Code red, priority, unsecured line. I lowered the phone from my ear. The sun was still shining on the street outside the coffee shop, but I felt like I had just stepped into a noir film. The stakes had just shifted from family drama to something legal and dangerous. I didn't go back to my apartment. My parents had a key to my place. For emergencies, they claimed. Though they never used it, but if Grant was desperate, and if Lila was right about him tracking assets, I couldn't risk him waiting for me there. I checked into a chain hotel 3 towns over, paying cash for a room on the 4th floor. It was a generic room, smelling of industrial cleaner and stale air conditioning, beige walls, beige carpet, beige curtains. It was the perfect void. I spent the afternoon sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the television without turning it on. My mind was a loop of the documents I had photographed, the shaky signature, the 18% interest rate. As the sun went down and the room filled with shadows, the reality of the other thing in my pocket finally began to surface, the lottery ticket. In the chaos of the discovery in my father's office and the clandestine meeting with Lila, I had shoved the winning ticket to the back of my mind. It felt like a fever dream, a hallucination brought on by stress and adrenaline. Did I really see those zeros? Or did my brain just snap under the pressure of being the family scapegoat? I needed to know. I couldn't go into a war with a weapon that might be fake. I got up and turned on the desk lamp. The yellow light pooled on the laminate surface. I fished the ticket out the ticket. It looked so unassuming. Just a piece of orange cardboard with silver scratch-off dust clinging to the edges. I pulled my phone out. I didn't want to trust my eyes. My eyes had been trained to see what my family wanted me to see. That I was small. That I was poor. That I was lucky to get crumbs. I needed an objective truth. I downloaded the official state lottery application. The installation bar crawled across the screen, agonizingly slow. 90%, 99%, complete. I opened the app. I navigated to the check your ticket scanner. My hand was shaking. I had to brace my wrist against the desk to steady the camera. I aligned the square barcode on the bottom of the ticket with the viewfinder on the screen. The camera focused. A split second of processing. Then, the screen changed. It didn't explode with confetti. It didn't play a trumpet sound. It just turned a solid, calm green. Congratulations. Claimant status, winner, prize amount, $100 million, payment option, annuity or lump sum. I stared at the screen. $100 million. I waited for the scream. I waited for the urge to jump on the bed, to call my best friend, to run down the hallway shouting, that is what people do in movies, right? They scream, they cry. They pop champagne, but I didn't scream. The sound in the room seemed to vanish. It was as if the air pressure had dropped, sucking all the noise out of the world. I sat there, completely still. The silence ringing in my ears like tinnitus. It wasn't joy, it was gravity. It was the feeling of a heavy steel door slamming shut between my past and my future. $100 million. That wasn't just money. That was power. That was a nuclear deterrent. That was enough money to buy the bank that held my father's debt and evict him just for sport. It was enough money to hire an army of lawyers to crush Grant Halston into dust. But it was also dangerous. If they knew, the thought made my blood run cold. If Grant knew I had this ticket, he wouldn't just try to manipulate me. He would destroy me. He would find a legal loophole to claim the ticket was community property because it was gifted during a family event. He would claim I was mentally unstable. He would sue me for emotional distress or some other frivolous nonsense just to freeze the assets. I closed the app. I opened a browser window. I typed into the search bar, lottery winner, what to do first. The results were sobering. Do not tell anyone. Hire an attorney. Hire a financial planner. Protect the ticket. I grabbed a pen from the hotel stationery pad. The article said the ticket is a bearer instrument. Whoever holds it, owns it, unless it is signed. I flipped the ticket over. My hand hovered over the signature line. This felt more permanent than a marriage license. I wrote my name, Brooklyn Young. I wrote it clearly, firmly, pressing down hard enough to indent the paper. I looked at the clock on the bedside table. 7:45. I took a picture of the front of the ticket. I took a picture of the back with my signature. I took a picture of the ticket next to the hotel television showing the news channel with the current date and time. Proof of life. Proof of possession. I walked over to the room safe in the closet. I punched in a code. My grandmother's birthday. I put the ticket inside. I locked it. Then I sat back down on the bed and waited. At exactly 8 o'clock, my phone rang. The screen displayed an unknown caller ID. I answered. Hello? Brooklyn. The voice was deep, gravelly, and smelled of old leather and pipe tobacco, even over the digital connection. It was Harper Briggs. I hadn't heard his voice in 10 years, since my grandfather's funeral, but I recognized it instantly. It was the voice of a man who knew where all the bodies were buried because he had drafted the contracts for the shovels. Mr. Briggs, I said, thank you for calling. I have so much to tell you. I found something in my father's office. I know, he said. I paused. You know? Did Lila call you? No, Harper said. Your grandmother told me. Grandma? I gripped the phone tighter. But she is. They said she is confused. They have her on medication. Grant has a letter from a doctor saying she's incompetent. That letter is worth less than the paper it is printed on, Harper growled. Ruth Hart is as sharp as a tack. Brooklyn. She has been playing a very dangerous game of possum for the last 6 months. Possum? She knew, Harper said. She knew your father was drowning in debt. She knew Grant was circling her property like a vulture. She came to me in May. She told me, "Harper, they are going to try to take my house. They are going to wait until I'm weak, and then they are going to strike." I felt tears prick my eyes. She knew. She did, Harper continued. And she told me one other thing. She said, "I cannot fight them alone. I am too old, and they are too hungry. I have to wait for Brooklyn. When Brooklyn wakes up, she will call you, and when she calls, it means it is time to drop the hammer." Twist number 3, I whispered to myself. The victim wasn't a victim. She was a strategist. "I have the photos, Mr. Briggs," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I have photos of the loan agreement, the 18% interest, the quitclaim deed they forced her to sign, the power of attorney." "Keep them," Harper said. "Those are good, but we have something better." "What?" "We have the truth about the title," Harper said. "Grant thinks he got her to sign a quitclaim deed transferring the house to his LLC. But here's the thing about property law. Brooklyn, you cannot transfer what you do not own." "But she owns the house," I said. "Grandpa left it to her." "She did own it," Harper corrected, "until 4 years ago, when she came to my office and transferred the title into a private living trust, the Ruth Hart Revocable Trust." My mouth fell open. "The house isn't in her name?" "No," Harper said. "It is in the trust. And do you know who the trustee is?" I held my breath. "Who?" "I am," Harper said. "And do you know who the sole beneficiary is upon her death?" "Me?" I whispered. "You," Harper confirmed. "Grant Halston can get her to sign 100 quitclaim deeds. He can drug her. He can threaten her. He can forge her signature. It doesn't matter. Ruth Hart, the individual, does not own that house. The trust owns it. And Ruth Hart, the individual, cannot sign away trust property without the trustee's signature. And I assure you, Brooklyn, I did not sign anything." I let out a laugh. It was a jagged, hysterical sound. "So, the document they have, the one they are using to get the loan, it is fraud," Harper said. "It is void, but more importantly, it is a felony. They are using a worthless deed to secure a loan. When the lender finds out the collateral doesn't exist, they won't just foreclose, they will press charges." "Oh my God," I said. "They walked right into a bear trap." "Ruth set the trap," Harper said with a hint of admiration. "She told me, 'Let them think they have won. Let them think I am a senile old woman. Let them sign their names on the dotted line. Because once they sign, they are locked in.'" "But Mr. Briggs," I said, "I have something else. Something that might complicate things." "What is it?" I took a deep breath. "The lottery ticket, the one Mom gave me as a joke." "The $2 one?" "It wasn't $2, I said. "Mr. Briggs, I won." There was silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. "How much?" he asked finally. His voice was completely flat. $100 million. I heard a sound on the other end. It sounded like a heavy leather chair creaking as someone sat forward abruptly. Then, the sound of a pen tapping against a desk. "Brooklyn," Harper said. His tone had changed. It was no longer just the voice of a family lawyer. It was the voice of a wartime general. "Listen to me very carefully. You are in a hotel?" "Yes." "Is the door locked?" "Yes." "Do not leave. Do not order room service. Do not call your mother. Do not call your sister. Do not call anyone." "I haven't?" "Good. Because this changes the battlefield," Harper said. "Before, we were fighting to save a house. Now, we are fighting to save your life." "My life?" "If Grant Halston finds out you have $100 million, Harper said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "he won't just try to steal it. He will try to break you. He will try to get you declared incompetent, just like he did to Ruth. He will argue that the ticket was a family gift, that it belongs to the pool. He will drag you through court for 10 years until you are bankrupt just to pay the legal fees." "He can't do that," I said. I signed it. He can do anything if he has enough leverage, Harper said. Money makes people crazy, Brooklyn, but debt makes them dangerous. And Grant is drowning in debt. If he sees you as a life raft, he will not ask you to pull him up. He will pull you down. So what do? We stay silent, Harper said. Silence is your weapon. We do not claim the money yet. We let the ticket sit in a safety deposit box. We focus on the house. We let them think you are still the poor, helpless daughter. We let them go on their cruise. We let them think they have won. And then? And then, Harper said, when they are in the middle of the ocean, thinking they are untouchable, we pull the rug out. I will file an injunction on the house. We will expose the fraud. We will invalidate the loan. And the money? I asked. The money stays in the dark, Harper said. For now. You don't need the money to beat them. Brooklyn, you need the law. And you have me. I looked at the safe where the ticket was locked away. I looked at the phone in my hand. For the first time since Thanksgiving, my heart rate slowed down. I wasn't panicked anymore. I was cold. I was focused. Okay, I said. We do it your way. We save Grandma first. We save Grandma. Harper agreed. And Brooklyn? Yes? Happy Thanksgiving, he said dryly. I hung up the phone. I walked over to the window and looked out at the parking lot. It was raining now, a cold to gray drizzle that slicked the asphalt. I thought about my parents packing their bags for the cruise. I thought about Peyton trying on her bikinis. I thought about Grant checking his projected acquisitions spreadsheet, thinking he was the smartest man in the room. They had no idea. They were sailing into a hurricane, and I was the one controlling the weather. I touched the glass. It was cold. You wanted a show, I whispered to the reflection of the empty room. I am going to give you the performance of a lifetime. I went to the bathroom and washed my face. I looked in the mirror. The girl who had stood in the kitchen washing dishes was gone. The girl who had accepted the insults was gone. In her place was a woman worth $100 million, armed with the best lawyer in the state, and fueled by a lifetime of being underestimated. I turned off the light. I lay down on the bed. I didn't sleep, but I rested. I needed my strength. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The office of Harper Briggs was located in a pre-war building downtown, the kind with a manual elevator and brass mailboxes that had not been polished since 1995. It was a stark contrast to the glass and steel aquarium where Grant rented his co-working space. When I stepped inside Harper's suite, the air changed. It didn't smell of ozone and ambition. It smelled of old leather, dust, and binding glue. It smelled like a library where the books were actually read. Not just displayed. It felt like a place where the truth didn't need to scream to be heard. It just waited patiently to be found. Harper Briggs was sitting behind a desk that looked large enough to land a small aircraft on. He was a man made of right angles, square jaw, square shoulders, square glasses. He didn't rise when I entered. He just gestured to the leather wingback chair opposite him. Sit, he said. His voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder. I sat. I placed my bag on the floor. Inside it, locked in a portable fireproof pouch I had bought at an office supply store that morning, was the lottery ticket. It felt radioactive. You slept? Harper asked, peering at me over his spectacles. Enough, I lied. He grunted. Accepting the lie as a necessary social lubricant, he slid a thick manila folder across the desk. It wasn't the file I had expected. I thought we would be looking at the fraudulent loan documents I had photographed. But this file was old. The edges were soft and worn. Before we discuss the war, Harper said, we need to discuss the supplies. Your grandmother was not a foolish woman. Brooklyn, she knew who your parents were. More importantly, she knew who they wanted you to be. I opened the file. It was a trust document, the Brooklyn Young Education and Welfare Trust. She set this up 10 years ago, Harper explained. When you graduated college, she put $50,000 into it. It is not a fortune. but it was everything she had saved from her pension that your father couldn't touch. I stared at the numbers. $50,000. 10 years ago. I was struggling to pay rent on a basement apartment. I was eating instant noodles and taking extra shifts at the design firm. I never knew. Why didn't she tell me? I asked, my throat tight. Because she knew your mother, Harper said bluntly. If Cynthia knew you had access to money, she would have guilted you into loaning it to the family, or Grant would have pitched you some investment scheme, Ruth told me. Keep it safe. Keep it hidden. One day, Brooklyn will need a parachute. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. She wanted you to have freedom. She just didn't realize that freedom would end up costing $100 million. I closed the folder. The money wasn't the point. The point was that while my parents were treating me like a servant, my grandmother had been silently building a safety net for me. She had been protecting me from inside the belly of the beast. Now, Harper said, his tone sharpening, let us talk about the house and the fraud. He opened a second file. This one was fresh, filled with the printouts I had sent him and his own research. I pulled the official records from the county clerk this morning, Harper said. The quitclaim deed transferring the house to Grant's Shell Company, DYGH Holdings, was recorded on October 15th, one day after the signature date. The date she was in the hospital, I added. Correct, but here's the interesting part. I tracked down the notary who stamped it. Harper pulled out a photocopy of the deed. He tapped a finger on the notary seal. A notary is supposed to verify that the signer is present, willing, and lucid, Harper said. Usually, in these rushed family transfers, they use a mobile notary, someone who asks no questions for an extra $50. He slid a smaller piece of paper across the desk. It was a copy of a page from a notary logbook. It looked like a photograph taken hurriedly. I have an investigator who is persuasive, Harper noted dryly. He got a look at the notary's record book. Look at the notes column. I squinted at the handwriting. It was scribbled, almost illegible, but the words sent a chill down my spine. Senior appeared drowsy. Difficulty holding pen. Son insisted she was just tired. Verified ID. Witness, Mark S. Mark S., I read aloud. Who is Mark S.? That is the twist, Harper said. On the recorded deed, the witness signature is legible. It says Mark Stevens. But when my investigator ran a background check on the address listed for Mr. Stevens, it is a UPS store, a mailbox. A fake witness, I whispered. Or a paid one who doesn't want to be found, Harper corrected. Either way, it smells, a drugged signer, a witness with a fake address, and a beneficiary who happens to be the son of the signer. This isn't just a bad contract. Brooklyn, this is a conspiracy to commit deed fraud. In the eyes of the law, that document is void ab initio. It never happened. So we can stop them, I said, feeling a surge of hope. We can just show this to the bank. We could, Harper said, but if we do that now, while they are still here, they will scramble. They will say it was a mistake. They will claim Mark Stevens is a real person who just moved. They will get a new doctor to certify Ruth is incompetent and try to force a new signature. They have possession of her. Brooklyn. Possession is 9/10 of the law in these messy domestic cases. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief. We need to wait until they are out of range. We need to wait until they are on that ship. The cruise, I said. Exactly. Once they are in international waters, they cannot rush back to the hospital. They cannot intimidate the notary. They cannot bully your grandmother. We file the challenge the morning they sail. By the time they get the notification, the locks on the house will already be changed. It was ruthless. It was calculating. It was exactly the kind of game Grant thought he was playing. But Harper was playing it better. Now, Harper said, putting his glasses back on, let us handle your other issue, the ticket. My hand instinctively went to my bag. We need to create a structure, Harper said. If you claim this money in your own name, every database in the country will flag you. Your address will be public. And your father's creditors, who are numerous and aggressive, might try to argue that since you live in the family sphere, your assets are commingled. They can't do that, I said. They can try, Harper said. And trying costs time and stress. We are going to avoid that. We are going to create a blind trust to claim the prize. I have already drafted the articles of incorporation for a limited liability company to serve as the beneficiary. He pushed a document toward me. The Luminary Trust. Luminary, I said, testing the word. Light, Harper said. You are bringing the truth to light. I thought it was fitting. It is perfect, I said. You will sign as the manager of the LLC. Harper instructed. I will act as the registered agent. Your name will not appear on the Lottery Commission's public press release. The winner will be the Luminary Trust. The check will be deposited into a corporate account at a private bank where I have a relationship. Your family will see a news report that someone in the county won. They will never know it was you. I signed the papers. My hand was steady. With every signature, I felt another layer of armor wrapping around me. I wasn't just Brooklyn Young anymore. I was an entity. I was a corporation. I was a fortress. Good, Harper said, collecting the papers. Now, go to work. I blinked. Work? Yes, Harper said. Go to your job. Design your parks. Eat your lunch. Be Brooklyn. Do not buy a new car. Do not quit. Do not change your hair. The most suspicious thing you can do right now is act different. If you suddenly start glowing with wealth, Grant will notice. He smells money like a shark smells blood. I can do that, I said. I have been pretending to be fine for years. I am an expert. One last thing, Harper said. I have my investigator looking into DYGH Holdings and the other companies linked to Grant. It is messy. How messy? It is a spider web, Harper said. Shell companies owning shell companies. But we found a thread. Most of the officers listed for these companies are people with no financial footprint. Students, retirees, people who probably were paid $500 to sign a form and hand over a driver's license. Straw men, I said. Exactly. But there is one name that keeps popping up as the consultant on all the filings, a woman named Cara Vance. Who is she? We don't know yet, Harper said. But she is the only real person in the web besides Grant. If we find her, we find the lever that collapses the whole structure. I nodded. Find her. I left Harper's office and drove straight to Vesperline Civic Design. I walked into the open plan office at 10:30 in the morning. My boss, a frantic man named David who always looked like he was 5 minutes away from a caffeine overdose, looked up from his drafting table. You are late, he snapped. The renderings for the Riverfront project are due at noon. I had a dental appointment, I said easily, sliding into my cubicle. Sorry, David, I will have them done by 11:30. I sat down. I turned on my computer. I opened the CAD software. It was surreal. I was sitting in a gray cubicle, under humming fluorescent lights, earning $35 an hour, and I had a piece of paper in a safety deposit box. Harper had taken the ticket to his bank's vault immediately, worth $100 million. I could buy this company. I could buy this building. I could buy David's house and evict him just to see the look on his face. But I didn't feel the urge to flex. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't need David to think I was a good employee. I didn't need my parents to think I was a good daughter. I didn't need any of it. I worked through the morning. I ate a sandwich at my desk. I listened to my coworkers gossip about their weekends. Did you hear about the lottery? Sarah from accounting asked, leaning over the partition. Someone in town won. Can you imagine? 100 million? Crazy, I said, taking a bite of my turkey sandwich. Probably some old guy who will spend it all on fishing boats. I would buy an island. Sarah dreamed. I would never wear shoes again. Sounds nice, I said. At 2 p.m, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Harper's investigator. A number I hadn't saved. Found a link on Cara Vance. She isn't just a consultant. She is the leasing agent for the office building where Grant rents his space, and she drives a Mercedes that is leased in Grant's name. I stared at the text. Grant wasn't just using strangers, he was using his mistress, or at least, someone he was intimate enough with to buy a car for. I quickly typed back, "Get the lease records. Get everything." I put the phone down and looked at my computer screen. I was designing a retaining wall for a park. It was a structure meant to hold back tons of earth, to prevent a collapse. It had to be strong. It had to be hidden. It had to be engineered perfectly. That is what I was doing. I wasn't just planning revenge. I was building a retaining wall. I was placing the stones one by one. The trust, the fraud evidence, the notary log, the hidden lottery win. I was building a structure that would hold back the landslide of my family's greed. And when the wall was finished, I would step back and let the earth fall where it may. I left work at 5. I drove to the nursing home where they had moved Grandma Ruth temporarily after the hospital. It was a nice place on the surface, manicured lawns, a lobby that looked like a hotel, but the smell was there, the smell of antiseptic and loneliness. I found her in her room. She was sitting in a wheelchair by the window, looking out at the parking lot. She looked smaller than I remembered, frail. "Grandma?" I whispered. She turned. Her eyes were clear today. The drugs must have worn off. "Brooklyn," she said. Her voice was scratchy. I walked over and knelt beside her chair. I took her hand. It was cold and papery. "I saw Harper," I whispered. "I know about the trust. I know about the house." She squeezed my hand. A surprising strength returned to her fingers. "Did you find the papers?" she asked. "Yes, and I found something else." I leaned in close to her ear. I didn't want the nurses to hear. I didn't want the walls to hear. "I won. Grandma," I whispered. "The ticket Mom gave me. I won everything." She pulled back and looked at me. Her eyes searched my face. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her lips. It wasn't a sweet smile. It was the smile of a woman who had just been dealt a royal flush after 50 years of folding. "Good," she rasped. "Make them pay. Brooklyn, make them pay for every tear." "I won't just make them pay," I said. "I am going to take away their ability to hurt anyone ever again." I stood up. I kissed her forehead. "You just hold on," I said. "A few more days. When they get on that boat, I am coming to get you. I am taking you home." "To Oakwood Lane," she said. "To Oakwood Lane." I promised. I walked out of the nursing home. The sun was setting, casting long, sharp shadows across the pavement. I got into my car. I checked my phone. There was a text from my mother. "Don't forget to come by tomorrow to pick up the mail key. We leave for the airport at 4 a.m. on Thursday. Try not to look so miserable when you say goodbye to your sister." I stared at the message, the casual cruelty, the assumption of my obedience. I didn't reply. I started the car. I wasn't miserable. I wasn't sad. I was a loaded weapon with the safety catch off. Harper had said to wait for the right moment, the moment when they couldn't rush back, the moment when they were suspended in luxury, thinking they were gods. That moment was coming. "I don't need revenge," I said to the empty car, repeating the thought that had crystallized in my mind. Revenge is emotional. Revenge is messy. I put the car in gear. I just need to turn on the lights and let the world see the cockroaches run. The night before my family departed for the cruise was not a quiet affair. It was a gala. It was a send-off party that rivaled a coronation. My mother had decided that simply going on vacation was not enough. They needed an audience to witness the departure. The house was filled with the usual suspects, neighbors, business associates of Grant, and relatives who hovered around the buffet table hoping for a crumb of recognition. The hallway was an obstacle course of luggage. There were 4 massive Louis Vuitton suitcases standing like sentinels near the door, their monogrammed leather catching the light of the chandelier. They were pristine, likely purchased specifically for this trip on credit, much like the trip itself. My role for the evening was, as always, unspecified, yet heavily demanding. I was the facilitator. I wasn't technically the help, but I wasn't quite a guest either. I was wearing a simple black dress that allowed me to fade into the background while I ferried trays of shrimp cocktail and refilled champagne flutes. "Brooklyn!" My mother's voice cut through the chatter. She was standing by the fireplace, holding court with the neighbors. "The hydrangeas in the foyer are drooping. Can you fix them? It looks sloppy." "On it," I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I walked to the foyer. The flowers were fine. They were perfectly hydrated. My mother just needed to exert control. She needed to remind everyone, and mostly herself, that she had staff. Even if that staff was her youngest daughter, I rearranged a few stems, snapping a dead leaf off with a satisfying crunch. Peyton floated past me. She was wearing a white silk jumpsuit that looked dangerous to eat in. She held a glass of Pinot Grigio and was laughing at something Grant had just whispered. "Oh, Brookie," she said, stopping to look at my handiwork. She used the nickname she knew I hated. "Make sure you come by the house every other day to water the plants while we are gone. Mom is terrified her orchids will die. You know how sensitive they are." She took a sip of her wine, her eyes dancing with amusement. "Besides, it will give you something to do. I know work is slow for you." The group around her chuckled. It was that low, polite laughter of people who are comfortable with cruelty as long as it is wrapped in a joke. "I will take care of it," I said, my voice steady. "I know how to handle delicate things." "Just don't kill them," Peyton teased, tapping my shoulder with a manicured nail. "We want to come home to a living house, not a funeral." I smiled. It was a genuine smile, which seemed to confuse her for a second. "Don't worry," I said. "Everything will be exactly as it should be when you get back." Grant wandered over, his face flushed with alcohol and adrenaline. He was riding high. In his mind, he had pulled it off. He had secured the loan, tricked Grandma Ruth, and was about to escape on a luxury liner before the consequences could catch up to him. "So, Brooklyn," he boomed, slinging an arm around Peyton's waist. "Did you buy another ticket? The jackpot is back down to 20 million. But hey, 20 million is better than a kick in the teeth, right?" He laughed at his own joke. He was fishing. He wanted me to be bitter. He wanted me to complain about the $2 ticket so he could feel superior about his earned wealth. I looked him dead in the eye. "I didn't buy another one," I said softly. "I think I used up all my luck on the last one." Grant snorted. "Yeah, $2. Don't spend it all in one place." "Oh, I won't," I said. "I find that luck likes surprises. Sometimes you win when you least expect it, and sometimes you lose when you think you have already won." Grant's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He looked at me, really looked at me, trying to parse the subtext, but then the alcohol washed it away. He clapped me on the shoulder, hard. "You are weird, Brooklyn," he said, dismissing me. "Come on, babe. Let's go toast to the open sea." I watched them walk away. I wasn't angry. Anger is hot. It burns fast. What I felt was cold. I felt like a sniper waiting for the wind to settle. The next morning, the house was a whirlwind of activity. The car service arrived at 4:30 in the morning. I was there, of course, because my mother had insisted I come to lock up after they left. I stood on the porch in the pre-dawn chill, hugging my coat around me. "Bye, darling," my mother called out from the back of the black SUV. "Don't forget the mail." "Have fun," I waved. "Try not to be too bored," Peyton yelled. Grant didn't say anything. He was busy on his phone, probably checking the market or dodging a call from a creditor he hadn't paid. The car pulled away, its taillights fading into the mist. I stood there for a long moment. The silence that descended on the house was heavy. It wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a crime scene after the perpetrators have fled. I walked back inside. I didn't lock up immediately. I walked into my father's office one last time. I looked at the desk where I had found the papers. It was clean now. He had shredded everything before he left, or so he thought. I took the spare key to Grandma Ruth's house from the hook in the kitchen. I put it in my pocket. "Bon voyage," I whispered to the empty room. I drove straight to Harper Briggs' office. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. Harper was already there, a fresh pot of coffee brewing. He looked like he hadn't slept, but his eyes were bright with the thrill of the hunt. "They are gone?" he asked as I sat down. "En route to the airport," I said. "Their flight leaves at 7. They board the ship in Miami at 3 o'clock this afternoon." "Excellent," Harper said. He looked at the clock. "We wait until 3:30. Once that ship leaves the dock, they are in a maritime prison of their own making. The internet is spotty, phone service is expensive, and they cannot physically return for at least 2 days until the first port of call." "And the filing?" Harper tapped a stack of documents on his desk. "The injunction is ready. We are filing a challenge to the title transfer based on fraud and lack of capacity. We are also filing a lis pendens, a notice of pending legal action. That effectively freezes the property. If Grant tries to sell it or borrow more against it while he is on the ship, the title search will flag it immediately." "It is a trap," I said. "It is a checkmate," Harper corrected. "Or at least, a check. The mate comes later." I spent the rest of the morning at work, going through the motions. My phone buzzed around noon. It was Peyton. "Hey, weird question. My card just got declined at the duty-free shop. Grant says it is a bank error because we are traveling, but he is on the phone and I need to buy these sunglasses. Can you Venmo me $500? I will pay you back as soon as we board." I stared at the screen. Her card was declined. It wasn't a bank error. It was the credit limit. Grant had maxed out everything to pay for the cruise tickets and the deposit on the loan he thought he had secured. The house of cards was already shaking in the breeze. I typed back slowly. "I don't have $500 in my account until payday. Peyton, sorry. Maybe ask Grant? He is the financial genius, right? Surely he has a backup card." I hit send. It was petty. It was delicious. She didn't reply. At 3:30 in the afternoon, Harper texted me one word. "Filed." That was the signal. The legal machinery had started to turn. The courthouse clerks were stamping the documents. The challenge was entered into the public record. The title to 12 Oakwood Lane was now a combat zone. I left work early. I drove to Grandma Ruth's house. It looked sad. The grass was overgrown. The blinds were drawn. My parents hadn't spent a dime on maintenance since she went into the hospital. They were just waiting to sell it. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The air was stale, smelling of old paper and dust. I walked through the rooms, touching her furniture, her books. I saw the spot on the floor in the hallway where she had fallen. I took out my phone. I needed to send a message. Not a text message, but a signal flare. I walked out to the front porch. I framed a photo of the front door, with my hand holding a set of contractor keys I had from my own job sites. I didn't show my face, just the keys and the peeling paint of the door frame. I posted it to my Instagram story. I knew Peyton checked social media obsessively, even on vacation. The caption was simple. "Project renovation starts today. Clearing out the rot to build something strong. New beginnings home." I didn't tag the location. I didn't need to. They knew this door. They knew this porch. Then, I drove to the nursing home to sit with Grandma Ruth. We watched Jeopardy on the television in the common room. I held her hand. "It is done," I whispered to her during the commercial break. "The papers are filed. They can't sell it." She squeezed my hand. Her eyes fixed on the screen, but a small, satisfied smile played on her lips. At 6 o'clock, the news broke. The local news station ran a segment every evening called Hometown Winners, usually. It was someone winning $5,000 on a scratch-off. Tonight, the anchor's voice was a little higher, a little more excited. And in a shocking turn of events, the State Lottery Commission has announced that the single winning ticket for the Thanksgiving jackpot, worth $100 million, was sold right here in our county. The winner has chosen to remain anonymous, claiming the prize through a trust called the Luminary Trust, but officials confirm the ticket was purchased at the Gas and Go on Route 9, just 2 days before Thanksgiving. I watched the screen. The Gas and Go on Route 9. That was the gas station where my father stopped every Tuesday to fill up his Mercedes. That was where he bought the joke ticket. I looked down at my phone. It started with a vibration, then another, then a continuous, angry buzzing that made the device dance across the small table next to Grandma's wheelchair. The family group chat, titled Young Family Vacay, was exploding. Aunt Lila: "Did you guys see the news? The jackpot winner is from here, Cousin Mark. 100 million? Holy crap. Who do you think it is?" Uncle Bob: "Route 9? That is right by your house." Dale. Then, silence in the chat for 3 minutes. A heavy, realized silence. Then, a private message from Peyton. "OMG. Brooklyn, did you see the news? Dad buys his tickets at that station. He bought the joke ones there." I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, a message from my mother. "Brooklyn, answer me. Another minute. Brooklyn, the ticket I gave you, the orange one, where is it?" I watched the bubbles appear and disappear as she typed, deleted, and retyped. She was panicking. She was remembering the specific shade of orange. She was remembering the Lucky 7 logo. She was doing the math in her head. $100 million. Handed over as an insult. "Brooklyn, pick up the phone. We are on the ship, but we have signal for a few more minutes. Answer me. Did you check that ticket?" My phone rang. The screen lit up with the photo of my mother, a picture where she looked perfect and judgmental. I let it ring. I looked at Grandma Ruth. She wasn't watching Jeopardy anymore. She was watching the phone vibrate. "Are you going to answer that?" she asked, her voice dry as old leaves. "No," I said. "Good," she said. The phone stopped ringing, then it started again instantly. This time it was Grant. Then the house phone at the nursing home started ringing at the nurse's station down the hall. They were calling everywhere. They were frantic. They were realizing that the joke might be the punchline that ends their lives. I picked up my phone. I didn't answer. I typed a single message to the group chat, responding to nothing in particular, just adding to the confusion. "Wow, that is crazy. Someone is really lucky. Hope they use it wisely." Then I put the phone on Do Not Disturb. I sat back in the chair. The room was quiet again. "Do you want to watch Wheel of Fortune?" I asked Grandma. "I think I do," she said. I could feel the panic radiating from the Atlantic Ocean, thousands of miles away. I imagined them standing on the deck of that cruise ship, holding expensive cocktails that they couldn't pay for, staring at their phones, realizing that they had given away the golden goose. They were trapped on a boat with people they tried to impress, while their financial schemes were unraveling back home, and the daughter they despised was holding the keys to the kingdom. I took a deep breath. For 34 years, my breath had been held in check, measured out in careful doses so I wouldn't take up too much space. Now, I inhaled deeply. I filled my lungs until they pressed against my ribs. I let it out slowly. The phone vibrated again in my lap, a desperate, buzzing insect. I ignored it. The game was no longer about them. It was about me. And for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the remote control. At 7:55 in the evening, Eastern Standard Time, I sent a single text message to the group chat. It was not a question. It was a summons. Video call. 8 o'clock. Mandatory. Do not be late. I was sitting in the conference room of Harper Briggs's law office. The room was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the glowing screen of my laptop and the city lights outside the window. Harper sat in the corner, just out of the camera's frame. He was my silent partner, my witness, and my bodyguard. He gave me a nod, a small, sharp dip of his chin that said, "Execute." I watched the clock on my screen. 7:59, 8 o'clock. I initiated the call. The screen remained black for a few seconds, the connection struggling to bridge the distance between a cold law office in Connecticut and a luxury liner somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Then, the pixels resolved. The image that filled my screen was a masterpiece of manufactured happiness. They were sitting in a lounge, likely the ship's exclusive VIP deck. The background was a stunning gradient of orange and purple, a perfect sunset over the ocean that looked like it had been color graded for Instagram. My mother was in the center, holding a flute of champagne. My father was on her left, wearing a linen jacket that was trying too hard to be casual. Peyton and Grant were squeezed in on the right. They looked golden. They looked rich. They looked like a family that had never known a day of worry. "Brooklyn!" my mother cried out, her voice tinny and delayed by the satellite connection. She waved at the camera, her bracelets clanking. "Oh, honey, we got your message. We were so worried when you didn't answer. Look at this sunset. We miss you so much. We were just saying. If only Brooklyn were here." "It is paradise, kid," my father chimed in, raising his glass. "Truly paradise. You really should have come." They were doing it. They were playing the happy family script. They were pretending that they hadn't spent the last 24 hours frantically calling me to find out if I was the millionaire holding their salvation. They were betting on the fact that I was still the submissive daughter who would crumble under a little warmth. I looked at my own reflection in the corner of the screen. I wasn't smiling. I was sitting straight, my hands folded on the table. "I wish I were there too," I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the tremor that used to plague me when I spoke to them. "But not in the way you think." Grant leaned forward. The jovial mask slipped just a fraction. "So," he said, trying to sound casual but failing to hide the greed in his eyes. "The news is going crazy back home. $100 million, bought at the Gas and Go. That is Dad's station. Brooklyn." He paused, waiting. The four of them leaned in. 4 sharks scenting blood in the water. "Did you check the ticket, Brooklyn?" my mother asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The orange one, the joke gift." I let the silence hang for a moment. I watched them sweat. "Yes," I said. "I checked it." "And?" Peyton asked, her eyes wide. "I won," I said. The reaction was instantaneous. It was an explosion of noise that distorted the audio feed. My mother shrieked. My father slammed his hand on the table. Peyton grabbed Grant's arm. They were laughing, high-fiving, their faces contorted in an ugly ecstasy. "I knew it!" Grant yelled, pointing at the camera. "I knew it! Oh my God! 100 million! We are rich! Brooklyn, you absolute legend!" "We have to celebrate," my mother screamed. "We will upgrade the suite. No, we will fly you out. Grant, can we get a helicopter to the ship?" "I am already on it," Grant said, pulling out his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen. "I will call the wealth management team at the firm. We need to structure this immediately to minimize the tax hit. I can set up a diversionary trust." "Brooklyn, listen to me. Don't sign anything until I see it. I am going to be your portfolio manager. We are going to turn that 100 million into $1 billion. He was already spending it. He was already managing it. He hadn't even asked if I wanted his help. He just assumed ownership. "Stop," I said. I didn't shout. I just said the word with a flat, final authority. They didn't hear me. They were too busy celebrating their own good fortune. "I said stop," I repeated, louder this time. The laughter died down. They looked at the screen, confused. "What is wrong?" Peyton asked. "We are celebrating. This is the best news ever." "Grant," I said, locking eyes with him through the camera. "Put the phone away. You are not my portfolio manager. You are not my advisor. And you are certainly not getting a helicopter." "What?" Grant laughed. A nervous, barking sound. "Brooklyn, don't be silly. You are in shock. It is a lot of money. You need family to help you navigate this." "I have help," I said. "And before we talk about the money, we need to talk about the truth." "Truth?" my father asked, frowning. "What truth?" "I am going to share my screen," I said. I clicked the button, the video feed of my face minimized, replaced by the digital documents I had prepared. The first image that filled their screen, and mine, was the loan agreement from Vantage Point Private Lending. It was blown up, high definition, undeniable. "What is this?" my mother asked, squinting. "This," I narrated, my voice cold. is a promissory note for a loan of $165,000. It is dated 3 months ago. The interest rate is 18%, compounding monthly. That is predatory. Dad, that is desperation. I move the cursor. And here are the signatures. Dale Young, borrower, Grant Halston, cosigner. On the screen, Grant's face went pale. The sunset behind him suddenly looked like a fire. "Where did you get that?" Grant demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "That is a private business document. You hacked my files? That is a felony. Brooklyn." "I didn't hack anything," I said. "I found it on Dad's desk on Thanksgiving. Careless." I clicked to the next slide. The quitclaim deed. "And here's the collateral," I continued. 12 Oakwood Lane, Grandma Ruth's house. You pledged a property you do not own to secure a loan you cannot pay." "We own it," my father shouted, blustering. "She signed it over. It is for her care." "She was drugged, Dad," I said. "I have the hospital records." I pulled up the timeline. It was a graphic Harper's team had built, side by side, the administration of high-dose painkillers and the timestamp of the notary stamp on the deed. October 14th, I read. At 2 o'clock, she was administered morphine. At 3:30, she signed a deed giving her home to Grant's shell company. That is not a legal transfer. That is elder abuse. That is fraud. Peyton was silent. She looked from Grant to the screen, her mouth slightly open. "Peyton," I said, addressing her directly, "did you know your cruise was paid for by leveraging Grandma's house against a loan shark?" Peyton stammered. "Grant told me. He said the business was doing well." "Grant lied," I said. "This is bullshit," Grant yelled. He stood up, knocking over his chair. People in the background of the lounge turned to look. "You are twisting everything. We are protecting the asset. We are managing the estate. You are just a jealous little brat who doesn't understand high finance." "High finance?" I laughed dryly. "Is that what you call identity theft?" I clicked to the next file. This was the twist. This was the knife I had saved for last. "Twist number 5, I whispered. The screen showed a credit report. My credit report. But highlighted in red were 3 accounts I had never opened. "I found this yesterday," I said. "When I ran a background check on myself to prepare for the lottery claim, it seems I have a credit card with a $20,000 limit that was maxed out 4 years ago. And another one opened last year." I zoomed in on the billing address for these cards. "The statements go to a post office box in Grant's name," I said. "And the transaction history? It is fascinating. A wedding dress boutique, a luxury car lease down payment, a jewelry store." I looked at Peyton. "That Vera Wang dress you wore to your wedding?" I asked softly. "The one Mom said was a gift from her inheritance? I paid for it. Peyton, my credit paid for it. Grant stole my identity to pay for your wedding." Peyton made a sound like she had been punched in the stomach. She looked down at her hands, then up at Grant. Her eyes were filled with a dawning horror. "Grant?" she whispered. "Tell me she is lying." Grant's face was a mask of fury. He leaned into the camera, his spit hitting the lens. "You ungrateful bitch," he hissed. "We took care of you. We let you sit at our table. We are family." "Look at his face. Peyton," I said calmly. "That is not the face of an innocent man. That is the face of a man who knows he is caught." My mother was crying now. Not the pretty, theatrical tears she usually cried. These were ugly, snotty tears of panic. "Brooklyn, please," she sobbed. "We can fix this. We can explain. Don't ruin us. We are on a cruise." "You are on a cruise," I agreed. "And I am in a lawyer's office." I stopped sharing the screen. My face returned to full view. I leaned forward. "Here is what is going to happen," I said. "I am not going to give you 1 cent of this $100 million, not a penny, but I'm going to do one thing." I held up a file. "I am going to pay off the loan to Vantage Point," I said. Grant's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. You will? Yes, I said. But not to save you. I am paying it off to release the lien on Grandma's house. And as part of the deal, the title of the house will be transferred immediately into an irrevocable trust for Ruth Hart's care. Harper Briggs is the trustee. I am the beneficiary. You can't do that, my father shouted. That is my mother's house. It is her house, I corrected. And she chose me. The paperwork is already filed. If you try to fight it, if you try to claim family rights, I will hand over the file on the identity theft to the FBI. I will put Grant in prison for 20 years. The silence on the other end was absolute. Even the ambient noise of the cruise ship seemed to fade away. Also, I added, there is a restraining order being filed against all of you regarding Grandma Ruth. You are not to visit her. You are not to call her. You are not to make medical decisions for her. If you come within 500 feet of 12 Oakwood Lane, you will be arrested. Brooklyn, Peyton whispered. I didn't know. Please, I didn't know. I believe you. Peyton, I said, but you enjoyed the fruit of the poisonous tree. You lived in the bubble. Now the bubble has popped. You are destroying this family, my mother wailed. Over money, over a stupid ticket. I am not destroying the family. Mom, I said. I am just turning on the lights. If the house is dirty, that is not the fault of the light switch. Grant looked like he was about to stroke out. His veins were bulging. You think you have won? He sneered. You are nothing. You are a gardener. You will lose that money in a year. Maybe, I said. But tonight, I am the one with the checkbook, and you are the one with a maxed-out credit card on a ship you can't afford. I reached for the mouse. Enjoy the rest of your trip, I said. I hear the buffet is excellent. You might want to fill up. It is going to be a lean winter. Brooklyn. Wait, my father yelled. Don't hang up. We can talk. We love you. I know, I said. You love what I can give you, but the store is closed. I didn't wait for the next lie. I didn't wait for the next threat. I pressed the red button. The screen went black. The connection was severed. The shouting was cut off mid-syllable. I sat there in the silence of the conference room. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Harper leaned forward from the shadows. Well done, he said. I looked at the black screen. For the first time in 34 years, I hadn't waited to be dismissed. I hadn't waited for permission to leave the table. I had stood up. I had flipped the table over, and I had walked out. Let's go get Grandma, I said. I want to take her home. The video call ended, but the silence in Harper Briggs's conference room was the heavy, pressurized silence of a bomb disposal site after the wire has been cut. I sat there, staring at the blank screen of my laptop. My hands were resting on the polished wood table. They were perfectly still. You did it, Harper said from the shadows. His voice was low, lacking his usual gravelly edge. It was the voice of a man who had just watched a structure demolition he had helped engineer. I did, I replied. I expected to feel a rush of adrenaline. I expected the cinematic high of the victor standing over the vanquished. But I didn't feel high. I felt hollowed out, as if the space that had been occupied by fear and resentment for 34 years was suddenly empty, waiting to be filled with something new. But while the room was quiet, the world outside was beginning to scream. We had cut the feed, but we hadn't cut the signal. Grant Halston was not a man who accepted defeat in silence. He was a creature of spin, a man who believed that if you spoke loud enough and fast enough, you could bend reality to your will. 10 minutes after the call ended, my phone vibrated, then it vibrated again. Then it began a continuous, angry dance across the table. Harper glanced at it. Do not answer. I am not going to, I said, but I want to see what he is doing. I picked up the phone. I didn't open the texts from my mother. There were 12 of them already. Instead, I opened social media. Grant had posted, of course he had. He was trapped on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic, his financial life unraveling, and his instinct was to go to the court of public opinion. He had posted a photo of the ocean, dark and blurry. The caption was a rambling, frantic block of text. Family is supposed to support each other. It is tragic when mental instability and jealousy tear a family apart. My sister-in-law is currently having a severe breakdown. She is making wild accusations and fabricating documents because she is confused and off her medication. We are trying to get her help from afar. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time. We love you. Brooklyn. Get help. I read it aloud. He is playing the crazy woman card. Harper cleaned his glasses, unbothered. Predictable. It is the last refuge of a scoundrel without a defense. She is hysterical. Therefore, I am innocent. It won't work. Why not? Because, Harper said, pointing to my screen. You are not the only one with receipts. I refreshed the feed. Underneath Grant's post, the comments were already rolling in. At first, there were a few sympathetic hearts from his clueless fraternity brothers. But then, the tide turned. A comment appeared from a user named Kara_V_Realty. Grant, stop lying. You haven't paid rent on your office space in 6 months. And the consulting fees you paid me? They were hush money to keep me from telling Peyton about the apartment you keep in the city. I am done covering for you. My breath hitched. Kara Vance, the mystery woman in the spider web. The leasing agent Harper's investigator had found. She flipped, I whispered. Self-preservation, Harper noted. She saw the ship sinking and decided she wasn't going to be the anchor. Kara didn't stop at a comment. She went to her own page. She posted a series of screenshots. They were brutal in their banality. Texts from Grant asking her to falsify income statements for loan applications. Venmo transactions labeled maintenance that matched the dates of my father's business trips, and a photo of a lease agreement for a luxury car. A Mercedes G-Wagon, registered to DYGH Holdings, but listed with Kara's home address. The internet does not forgive, and it certainly does not forget. Within an hour, the thread had been picked up by a local community watchdog group. People love a villain, but they love watching a fake pillar of the community crumble even more. Then came the dominoes I hadn't even pushed. A man named David Miller commented, Grant Halston convinced my parents to invest their retirement in a guaranteed yield fund 3 years ago. They haven't seen a penny since. Every time we ask, he says the market is correcting. Is this the same Grant? Another woman replied, he handled my divorce settlement, or he was supposed to. He convinced me to take a private loan to cover the legal fees, signed by his own company. I am paying 20% interest on my own money. It was an avalanche. The facade of the financial genius wasn't just cracking. It was vaporizing. Grant wasn't being taken down by a vengeful sister-in-law. He was being taken down by the trail of wreckage he had left behind him for a decade. I had just provided the spark. The fuel had been there all along. And then, the fire jumped to the next house. My father. Harper's paralegal entered the room, holding a tablet. Mr. Briggs, you need to see the alert on the Dale Young portfolio. Harper took the tablet. He raised an eyebrow. It seems your father's creditors are also on social media. The news of the Young family scandal was spreading locally. And when creditors hear the word scandal attached to a borrower who is already over-leveraged, they don't wait for a court order. They panic. My father's carefully constructed image of wealth was built entirely on revolving credit. He used one card to pay another, one loan to service the interest on the next. It was a Ponzi scheme of one. The bank that holds the lease on his Mercedes just triggered a repossession order, Harper read, and the country club board just sent an emergency email suspending his membership pending an ethics review. Apparently, using club facilities to host meetings for predatory lending schemes is against the bylaws. I closed my eyes. I could see my father on that ship. I could see him reading these emails. The shame wouldn't be that he had done wrong. The shame would be that people knew he was broke. For Dale Young, poverty was a sin, but public poverty was a death sentence. He is finished, I said. He won't have a car to drive home from the airport. He might not have a home to drive to, Harper added. Once the foreclosure on the main house starts, And it will start tomorrow when the mortgage lenders see this mess. The equity will be wiped out. My phone rang again. It wasn't a text this time. It was a call. Mother. I looked at Harper. You don't have to answer, he said. No, I said, reaching for the phone. I need to hear it. I swiped the green button. I didn't put it on speaker. I held it to my ear. Brooklyn! It was a scream. Not a scream of fear, but a scream of pure, unadulterated rage. How dare you! My mother shrieked. How dare you do this to us? Do you have any idea what is happening? Mrs. Gable from the garden club just texted me asking if it is true that your father is bankrupt. The neighbors are talking. Brooklyn, you are humiliating us. I listened to her voice. For years, that tone had made me shrink. It had made me apologize. It had made me run to fix whatever imaginary error I had committed. Now, it just sounded like a noise, like a car alarm going off in the distance. Is that all you care about, Mom? I asked calmly. Mrs. Gable? I care about our reputation, she yelled. We are respectable people. We gave you everything. We gave you life. And this is how you repay us? By airing our dirty laundry on the internet? By ruining your sister's vacation? You stole Grandma's house, I said. You stole my identity. You let Grant abuse me for years because he paid for your lifestyle. We did what we had to do, she snapped. That house was sitting there doing nothing. Ruth doesn't even know where she is half the time. And Grant was just being creative. He was trying to help the family. Creative, I repeated. Is that what you call forging a signature? You are a spiteful, jealous little girl, my mother spat. You are just mad because Peyton got the cruise and you got a ticket. Well, guess what? You might have the money, but you will never have a family. We are done with you. Do you hear me? You are dead to us. Mom, I said. I cut her off. I didn't raise my voice. I just spoke with a clarity that silenced her. You are not the victim here. You are the villain. And as for the family, I didn't kill it. I just turned on the lights. If what you see in the light is ugly, that is on you. I hung up. I blocked the number. I sat there for a moment, waiting for the guilt. It didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange lightness in my chest, as if a heavy coat had been lifted from my shoulders. My phone chimed with a text message. I braced myself for another attack, but the name on the screen made me pause. Peyton. I opened it. It was a long block of gray text. Brooklyn. I am sitting in the bathroom of the cabin because Grant is throwing things in the bedroom. I read the documents you showed. I read the credit report. I want to say I didn't know, and that is true. I didn't know about the cards. I didn't know about Grandma's house. But I knew something was wrong. I knew we spent too much. I knew Grant was shady. I chose not to look, because it was easier, because I liked the clothes, because I liked being the favorite. I am not asking for the money. I don't deserve it. I just wanted to say that I am sorry. Not, I am sorry, but just sorry. You were the only real thing in this family, and we treated you like garbage. I hope you find peace. You deserve it. I stared at the screen. It was the first time in 36 years that my sister had spoken to me without a filter, without the Peyton the Princess persona. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to forgive. Forgiveness is a process, not a switch. But I didn't block her. I let the message sit there, a small white flag in the middle of the battlefield. I need to go, I said to Harper. Where? To see the only person who matters. I drove to the nursing home. It was late, past visiting hours, but the night nurse knew me. She saw the look on my face and buzzed me in without a word. The facility was quiet. The lights dimmed to a soft amber. I walked down the hallway to room 304. Grandma Ruth was awake. She was sitting up in bed, reading a paperback novel under the small reading light. She looked up when I entered. She didn't ask, "Did you do it?" or "What happened?" She just looked at me. She looked at the way I stood. She looked at the lack of tension in my shoulders. She looked at the clarity in my eyes. She closed her book and placed it on the nightstand. "You look taller," she said. I pulled the chair up to her bedside and sat down. I feel taller. Is it done? She asked softly. It is done, I said. The world knows. Grant is exposed. Dad is ruined. And the bank? I looked at my phone, where a fresh email from Harper had just landed. The bank just agreed to a stay of execution on the foreclosure, I told her. Harper sent over the medical records and the affidavit from the notary investigation. They are classifying the deed transfer as suspected fraud. They are voiding the lien on the house. It is safe. Grandma, nobody is taking it. Ruth let out a long, shaky breath. She closed her eyes for a moment, and I saw a tear slip out from under her lashes. It tracked through the map of wrinkles on her cheek. I was so afraid, she whispered, not of losing the house, but of leaving you alone with them. I was afraid that when I died, they would eat you alive. They tried, I said. But they broke their teeth. She opened her eyes and reached for my hand. Her grip was strong. You didn't just save the house, Brooklyn, she said. You saved yourself. That is what I was waiting for. I didn't give you that ticket. Your mother gave you that ticket as a joke. But you took it, and you made it a sword. I used to think I needed them to love me, I confessed. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I was quiet enough, if I cleaned up enough messes, they would finally see me. They saw you, Ruth said. They saw a servant. They saw a scapegoat. You can't make people love you by being useful. Brooklyn, you can only make them use you. I know that now, I said, and I don't need their permission anymore. I don't need their permission to be happy. I don't need their permission to be rich. I don't need their permission to exist. That, Ruth said, smiling, is worth more than $100 million. We sat there in the quiet room for a long time. I didn't check my phone. I didn't care what Grant was posting or what my mother was screaming. Those were noises from a life I had already left behind. I thought about the money, $100 million. It was a terrifying amount of freedom. But sitting there, holding my grandmother's hand, I realized something strange. I wasn't happy in the way I thought I would be. I wasn't ecstatic. I wasn't planning a shopping spree. I felt peace. It was a cool, quiet stillness. It was the feeling of standing on solid ground after treading water for a decade. It was the feeling of knowing that no matter what happened next, no matter how much they screamed, they could never touch me again. I had stepped out of the play. I had walked off the stage. And for the first time, I was writing my own lines. We are going to fix the garden, I said to Grandma Ruth. At the house, the hydrangeas are overgrown, and the walkway needs repaving. I am going to make it beautiful. I would like that, she said. Plant some peonies, pink ones. Pink peonies, I agreed. And maybe a fence, a very high, very strong fence. She laughed, a dry, raspy chuckle that sounded like victory. Yes, she said, a very good fence. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. The storm was raging outside, but inside, the air was clear. I had burned the bridge, and by the light of the fire, I could finally see where I was going. The legal conclusion of a war is rarely as dramatic as the battles that precede it. There is no swelling orchestra, no sudden gavel strike that echoes through a crowded courtroom. Instead, there is just the quiet, rhythmic scratching of a pen against paper in a room that smells of lemon polish and old jurisprudence. 2 weeks after the cruise ship docked, a return trip that I imagine was the longest, quietest journey my family ever took, I sat in Harper Briggs's office for the final time. On the desk sat a check drawn from the newly established account of the Luminary Trust. It was made out to Vantage Point Private Lending for the sum of $189,000. This covered the principal, the predatory interest, and the administrative fees Grant had tacked on. It was a ransom payment, plain and simple. I was buying back my grandmother's freedom. Are you sure you want to pay this? Harper asked, his pen hovering over the ledger. We could fight the debt itself. We could drag Grant into court for fraud. We could likely get the whole thing discharged. We could, I agreed, looking at the check. But that would take years. It would require depositions. It would require dragging Grandma Ruth onto a witness stand to testify that her son and grandson drugged her. She is 82. Harper, I am not buying justice. I am buying time. I am buying her the right to die in her own bed without a foreclosure notice taped to the door. Harper nodded. He understood. He slid the check into an envelope. Then it is done, he said. The lien is released, the title is clear, and per the new deed structure we filed this morning, the property at 12 Oakwood Lane is now held in the Ruth Hart Irrevocable Living Trust. You are the sole trustee. The beneficiary is Ruth Hart for the remainder of her natural life, and upon her passing, the asset transfers to you. No power of attorney can touch it. No creditor can seize it. It is a fortress. And the clause? I asked. Included, Harper confirmed. Clause 7. Section B. The resident, Ruth Hart, is entitled to 24-hour in-home care, fully funded by the trust. For the duration of her life, no family member may remove her from the premises against her will. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was a child. It was over. The house was safe. The next month was a blur of physical labor, the kind that leaves your muscles aching and your mind clear. I took a leave of absence from Vesperline Civic Design. My boss, David, was surprisingly understanding when I told him I had family matters to attend to. Though he had no idea those matters involved a 9-figure bank account, I went to work on 12 Oakwood Lane. This was my domain. I wasn't a lawyer or a financier. I was a landscape architect. I understood how to reshape an environment to make it livable. I hired a team of contractors. Not the cheapest ones, but the best ones. We tore out the rotting front steps. We installed a graded ramp that curved gently through the front garden, integrating it into the landscape so it didn't look like a hospital entrance, but like a winding garden path. I widened the doorways on the ground floor. I converted the dining room, which Grandma never used, into a sunlit bedroom with an accessible ensuite bathroom. I installed smart lighting that she could control with her voice, so she would never have to stumble in the dark again, but the real work was outside. I decimated the overgrown weeds that had choked her yard while my parents were busy counting money they didn't have. I brought in fresh topsoil. I planted hydrangeas along the fence line, their heavy blue heads nodding in the breeze. And in the center of the garden, right where she could see it from her new bedroom window, I planted a bed of peonies, Sarah Bernhardt peonies, massive, fragrant, and unapologetically pink. On the day I brought her home, the air was crisp and cold, a precursor to the deep winter. But the sun was shining. I picked her up from the nursing home in my car. I still drove my old Honda, though I had treated it to a professional detailing. When I wheeled her up the new path, she didn't say a word. She just looked at the flowers. She looked at the fresh paint on the siding. She looked at the front door, which was no longer peeling, but painted a deep, welcoming sage green. I pushed her wheelchair into the foyer. The house smelled of fresh paint, lemon oil, and the pot of Earl Grey tea I had brewed before leaving to get her. "Home," she whispered. The word sounded like a prayer. I wheeled her into the kitchen. I poured her a cup of tea in her favorite china cup, the one with the chipped rim that my mother had tried to throw away a dozen times. She took a sip, her hands steady. She looked at me over the rim of the cup. Her eyes were wet. "You spent a lot of money," she said. "I spent enough," I replied, sitting opposite her. "The house is yours. Grandma, legally, forever. Nobody can take it. Nobody can move you. If Dad or Mom or Grant try to step foot on this property without your permission, the police will remove them." Harper made sure of it. She set the cup down. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was thin as parchment, but beneath it, I could feel the pulse of a survivor. "I worried about you," she said softly. "When you told me about the lottery, I worried that the anger would eat you. Money is fuel. Brooklyn, if you pour it on a fire, it burns everything down." "I was angry," I admitted. "I wanted to burn them down. I wanted to see them suffer. And now? I looked around the kitchen. I looked at the sunlight streaming through the clean windows. I thought about the check I had written to the lender. I thought about the silence of my phone, which no longer jumped with demanding texts from my mother. Now, I said, I just don't care about them. I don't want them to suffer. I just want them to be somewhere else. Grandma Ruth squeezed my hand. You didn't need revenge, honey, she said, her voice firm and clear. You just needed freedom. Revenge keeps you tied to the people who hurt you. Freedom lets you walk away. She was right. Revenge would have been dragging them through court for years, reliving every insult. Freedom was writing a check, changing the locks, and planting peonies. A week later, I met Peyton. She had texted me, asking for 5 minutes. Just coffee, no lawyers, no parents. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe downtown, far from the country club circle where our family used to pretend to be royalty. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The Peyton I knew was a construct of high-maintenance beauty, blowouts, designer logos, and a perpetual look of boredom. The woman who walked in wore jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired. She looked her age. She ordered a black coffee. She didn't order a pastry. "How is Grandma?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. "She is good," I said. "She likes the new room. She is planting bulbs for the spring." Peyton nodded. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Grant and I are separating," she said. The words fell out like stones. I didn't feign surprise. "I assumed so." He is in a lot of trouble," Peyton said. "The lawsuits? The fraud investigation? He is staying with his brother in Jersey. The lawyers say he might do time." "He earned it," I said. "Yeah," Peyton whispered. "He did." She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "I wanted to hate you," she said. "When the news broke, when Dad lost the car, when Mom started screaming that you ruined us, I wanted to hate you so much. It would have been easier. But then I looked at my closet," Peyton said. "I looked at the wedding dress. I looked at the jewelry, and I realized I didn't own any of it. You did. You paid for my life, Brooklyn, without even knowing it." "I didn't choose to," I reminded her. "I know," she said. "That makes it worse. I lived in a bubble. Brooklyn, a bubble made of your stolen credit and Dad's lies. And I was so comfortable in there I never once looked out to see you drowning." She took a breath. "I am sorry," she said. "I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't pay you back. But I am sorry I was a bad sister." I looked at her. I waited for the movie moment. I waited for the urge to reach across the table, hug her, and say, "All is forgiven." It didn't come. Trust is like a mirror. You can fix it if it breaks, but you can still see the crack in that mother's reflection. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "I accept your apology." Peyton waited for more. When I didn't offer it, she nodded, accepting the boundary. "What will you do now?" I asked. "I got a job," she said, a small, self-deprecating smile touching her lips. "Real estate, an entry-level admin role. I need to learn how to actually make money before I can spend it again." "That sounds like a good plan," I said. We finished our coffee. We didn't hug goodbye. We just nodded. It wasn't a reunion. It was a truce. And for now, a truce was enough. My parents were a different story. They didn't separate. Narcissists often cling to each other when the ship goes down, bound by a shared sense of victimhood. They lost the big house. The foreclosure was swift and merciless. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental in a neighboring town. My mother called me once, a month after the foreclosure. She didn't scream this time. She cried. She told me about the small apartment. She told me about how Dad's back hurt. She told me they were struggling to pay for the movers. "We just need a little help to get settled," she sniffed. "Just a small loan. We are family. Brooklyn." I sat in my car, listening to her. I had $100 million. I could buy them a mansion and not even feel the dent in my account. but I remembered the lottery ticket. I remembered the joke. I remembered the feeling of being small. "I can't do that, Mom," I said. "You can't?" she gasped. "Or you won't?" "I won't," I said. "I am paying for Grandma's care. That is my contribution to the family. You and Dad, you are adults. You are independent. You will figure it out." I hung up. It wasn't cruelty. It was the hardest love I had ever given. If I gave them money, I wouldn't be saving them. I would just be buying them a newer, more expensive mask to hide behind. I would be the new Grant, financing their delusion. I chose to let them be human. Humans have consequences. As for the money, I didn't buy an island. I didn't buy a yacht. I stayed at Vesperline for another 6 months, finishing my projects, before I resigned. Then, I walked into Harper's office with a new plan. We established the Ruth Hart Foundation. It wasn't a massive charity that threw galas. It was a scholarship and grant fund specifically for young women in the creative arts and design fields. Women who came from backgrounds where they were told their dreams were hobbies. Women who were overlooked. Women who were the extra in their own families. I read every application myself. When I saw a girl who wanted to be an architect but couldn't afford the software, we bought it. When I saw a painter who was working 3 jobs to pay rent, we gave her a grant to focus on her art for a year. I wasn't just giving them money. I was giving them what Grandma Ruth gave me: a ticket out. Grant Halston disappeared in the way that most mediocre men disappear when their power is stripped away. He didn't go out in a blaze of glory. He pled guilty to lesser charges to avoid a long trial. He lost his license. He lost his reputation. People just stopped talking about him. He became a cautionary tale told in hushed tones at the country club, a ghost story about greed. 6 months after the Thanksgiving that changed everything, I sat on the back porch of Grandma Ruth's house. It was evening. The air was warm and smelled of the peonies, which were finally in full bloom. Grandma was asleep inside, safe and sound. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the lottery ticket. I had never cashed in the physical ticket myself. Harper had handled the exchange with the commission, but I had kept the original scrap of cardboard. I had laminated it. I looked at the neon orange ink. Lucky 7. It looked so cheap, so flimsy. People think $100 million changes who you are. They think it turns you into a different person. It doesn't. Money is just an amplifier. If you are greedy, it makes you a monster. If you are insecure, it makes you a show-off. But if you are someone who just wanted to be seen, it gives you the power to stop looking for eyes that will never watch you. I ran my thumb over the plastic. "They put me in my place," I whispered to the twilight. I smiled. And this time, the smile reached my eyes. It just turned out that my place wasn't at the kids' table. My place was at the head of the table. I put the ticket back in my pocket. I picked up my tea. I listened to the crickets singing in the garden I had built, in the home I had saved, in the life I had chosen. I was finally free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below with your city and country, and let me know what you would have done if you were in my shoes. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lucy Revenge Stories channel, hit the like button, and tap the notification bell to help this story reach even more people.